Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Floss and Code. Man, this is a long time coming. Y'all probably never even heard of Floss or Code. No, you probably have. But this is an event that we've, I see Atlanta, Georgia. This is an event that we actually kicked off last year in Atlanta, Georgia, on person with some Morehouse students and some Spelman students as well. And most of you probably haven't heard of it because we only had 70 people there. But I'm Brian Douglas. Let me just jump right in. This is Floss and Code. This is an event that I've been planning in partnership with Stripe as well as Vercel. And I'm super pleased to be able to share this with you today. So some of you are sort of strolling in because you just happen to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel because we do have content from GitHub. But this is an event that is not only just a hackathon powered by GitHub and Stripe, it's also an event that's associated with GitHub Universe. If anybody's planning on going to GitHub Universe next week, December 8th to 10th, just give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no. Actually, just say yes. You don't even need to say no, because I know you're going to be there. But it's going to be online. It's going to be githubuniverse.com. It's also going to be streamed directly from here, as well as githubuniverse.com. We'll have multiple tracks, and I highly encourage you to check that out. We're going to have an awesome keynote. We're going to talk about a lot of new features that we're shipping, some features that we'll talk about in a moment that are going into public beta. But highly encourage you, definitely just hit that subscribe button, check out GitHub Universe, and take a look at the schedule as well. But I was sort of alluding to it, and hold on, I'll find my slide. I prepped myself for a joke, and I completely just messed this up. But I'm Brian Douglas. I go by B-Dougie on GitHub, and I joke that I'm Beyonce at GitHub, mainly because Beyonce has a lot of fans, and I have a lot of fans. I'm kind of like a big deal on the internet. And but I have the honor to be developer advocate here at GitHub. And my focus is really just engaging the community, doing events like this, building examples for GitHub Actions, building examples for code spaces soon that I hopefully will ship in the next few weeks. And if everything else you need to know about me is on my Twitter, it's on my GitHub. So definitely check out bdougie on Twitter or bdougie at GitHub. And as I mentioned, a year and a half ago, we launched this event called Floss and Code. And it was really focused around encouraging people to do open source and learn open source. We met with computer science students, and not only did they have a GitHub account, but they also had, they not only were they becoming an engineer in college, but we wanted to encourage them to create their GitHub account and to do open source. So we had a bunch of open source maintainers come on site and through Zoom calls and do open source contributions that day. So it was open source hack day, and it was super successful. We had, I think, about 8 PRs merged before that Sunday of the event. And it was absolutely phenomenal. With a lot of content produced from it. And I'm super pleased to be able to continue the program. We did plan this event earlier this year in Oakland, but for reasons of 2020 reasons, we had to move this event remote. And this is the event what we have right here today. So huge shout out to 2 of our big partners, which is Stripe. Stripe is a payment platform. So if you've not heard of Stripe, today is the day that you will learn about Stripe. At the end of the day, we will have a workshop with Stripe, with the engineer and developer advocate from Stripe talking about how you can leverage Stripe this week in the hackathon, as well as just leverage Stripe in general with a real life project. We have a template where you don't have to do all the work to get started. Like, we do have a template hosted on GitHub open source that you can actually just point and click to deploy to Vercel, which is also our second partner too as well. Vercel helped us out a lot with their open source React framework called Next.js. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to do is going to be in JavaScript, it's going to be Next.js. And Vercel is here in the house today, and they will also be giving a workshop on Vercel. So please stick around. All the stuff is going to be obviously recorded on YouTube, so you always watch this too as well. But that's why I'm telling you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, because that's what you do on YouTube. You got to subscribe. So this is the repo. This is actually, and I'll drop this in the link. Actually, other folks could drop this in the link. We have access to chat. This is all the questions about the hackathon, the event, the rules, the frequently asked questions. It lives right here. And again, the original event was really focused around contributing to open source. This event specifically is focused on getting businesses online. So if it's your business, if it's the bakery down the street, you as a developer, you have the skill set to build websites. Maybe you're new to JavaScript, maybe you do the coding, maybe you just graduated at boot camp. We want to give you all the tools you can learn to get to that point where you can start building web apps and websites. So that's why we have, not only did we create this repo for us to engage and have conversations in, which I'll talk about in a moment with Becca. But we have an actual Stripe template, which you'll find in the README of this project. So I highly encourage you, go over there, hit the star, and watch this repo and jump into the issues and discussions and learn all about this project. And I'll be pointing us back to this repo throughout the day, because I know some people, we can't stay for the whole time. This is, you probably have a tab open, you're probably working at the same time while you're watching this, or maybe you're not working. I won't tell your boss. But what I'm getting at is I encourage you just to check out this repo, and that's why I keep it on the screen. But I did want to actually jump in to the repo itself and sort of point out a couple different things. Most of you found the meetup group here, and that's where you discovered this event. If you weren't already subscribed to the YouTube page, I do encourage you to also join our meetup, our GitHub virtual event meetup. This is one of many events that we'll be hosting at GitHub. Like, a lot of stuff has gone remote, and this is the place that we're going to be announcing our remote events. So if you're interested in joining meetups with GitHub employees, if you want to learn how to contribute to open source, I do a stream every Friday called Open Source Friday. I say every Friday. For the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing GitHub Universe stuff, so not every Friday, but actually in 2 weeks, I'll be doing a stream with Cypress, which is the end-to-end testing platform, and we'll be doing some Open Source Friday, December 11th, which is there. Definitely check out the meetup page. But going back to here, you'll have information about what we're going to be talking about today, Q&A. You can learn about FLOSS and what FLOSS means, free as in Libre, open source software. That is the acronym. I'm not sure if everybody got that or understand the entendre there. And then you also find out how to get started. If you want to participate, you don't actually have to participate in the hackathon to join this event. Like, you can just watch, enjoy, keep that tab open, keep Twitter open, hit me up, hashtag FLOSS and code. And we'd have that conversation. But speaking of conversations, I wanted to bring on Becca to chat about GitHub discussions and how we're leveraging discussions and how you can leverage discussions in your projects as well. So Becca, without further ado, do you want to say hello?
Hello, Brian, and thank you for having me today. I'm Becca. I'm on the product team here at GitHub, and I'm working on the discussions feature, which we'll be using for the hackathon that y'all are participating in. So I'm just going to give you a quick tour of the feature, since it's not publicly available on all repositories right now. And so I want to make sure everyone here today understands how you can utilize this space, have conversations with the community, and get your questions answered, because they might not be happening over on YouTube. Instead, they're probably going to be happening here, especially as you get started on your project. So as Brian mentioned, discussions is going to be the space that you'll be utilizing for your conversations for this hackathon today. I'm going to quickly go through a few little features. There's been a few conversations that Brian started, specifically one that I want to call out, which are just introductions. Not everyone today is able to see one another, and so it's been probably a really good idea to maybe introduce yourself. We have some folks here who have already introduced themselves, saying what they're doing, what languages they're writing in, where they're from. Austin, Texas here. We have a few Hubbers, pretty exciting. And if you'll notice, we also have threads, which is really great. So unlike issues, which is where you'll be opening up sort of like your work, your productivity list, your to-dos, here, this is more of a space where you're going to have conversations. You can reply to people in line, and you're not really detracting from the conversation. So highly recommend everyone hop in, introduce themselves, but this probably will get lost. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pin it. So we have this really cool ability to pin a conversation so that everyone can get back to it really easily. Boom. We have one really sweet pin discussion right there at the top. So please, everyone, go ahead and introduce yourself to the community. And we're gonna quickly go into another one. So everything that you'll need today for conversations, for questions, can be in a discussion. Everything else will probably be within an issue for the projects that you're going to be working on and the proposals that you're going to have. And so if you notice, there's a big old green new discussion button. When you click on that, you're going to be asked to start a new discussion. And all you have to do is select the category in which your discussion is going to be. So if you have a question about what you're thinking of starting or how to solve a problem, the community can go ahead and help you there. So all you have to do is select the category, have your question. We'll just type this. and say, well, I need a lot of help. So what documents do I need to look at? I know that there's a ton of them there. So we can go ahead and start that discussion, and the community can go ahead and start responding and mark things as answers. So ideally, you'll know whether or not someone's able to help you, because they'll have the ability to say, you know, this is exactly where you need to look, or this is the function that you need to use. And you can get all of that right here over in discussions. Brian, am I missing anything that we need to quickly go over in discussions over here?
No, I think that is great. And I'm curious, who does everybody have access to discussions at this point?
Yeah, so great question. As I kind of mentioned earlier, that right now discussions is in a limited public beta. So we're working with hundreds of different open source communities in a public beta state to get feedback and iterate. And so we'll be announcing shortly when this is going to be available to all public repositories. With that being said, as you start getting into discussions and using it, if you need access or have any feedback, there is this little give feedback text right here at the bottom. We have an open repository where you can give us feedback for the discussions feature. So anything that you have a question on, or you need something that we don't yet support, you can go ahead and give us that feedback in this public space today. And we'll be in there, as you'll notice, like we have the ability to say exactly what the answer is. We have a lot of people who are, well, surprise, I'm there at the top, but also not a surprise since it's the discussions feature, but you can see exactly who has an answer being marked, where an answer is available, and what yet doesn't really have a reply, which means I need to get back to this ASAP right after this hackathon event.
Excellent. Looks like you got some work to do. I'm also curious, as far as GitHub Universe, are you giving a talk at GitHub Universe as well?
I am not, but my colleague Neha is going to be going over some really exciting features. So I would highly recommend tuning into GitHub Universe if you want to know a bit more about discussions, how our communities are currently utilizing it, and how you might be able to utilize it yourself for your open source contributions.
Excellent. Folks, githubuniverse.com if you are curious or intrigued to check that out. It'll be happening next week, as I mentioned earlier. And Becca, thanks for your time. And yeah, looking forward to all that work you're going to be doing today to get this stuff launched.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so folks, if you just joined us, this is the Floss and Code event. It's a hackathon. All information you could find if you just go to GitHub and look for Floss and Code. We have a Stripe hackathon. There's a repo in there. Inside the README will be all the instruction how you can participate. No worries if you don't want to participate. You can just hang out, answer questions, join the discussion, and just learn as well. So no pressure. We're here to be here for all you folks. But I did want to introduce our first keynote speaker, which is Justin Samuels. Justin has been working as a senior engineer at MailChimp, as well as working on a nice little side project, which is, well, I don't know if it's even be a side project. It seems pretty legit, called Rebuild Black Business. How you doing, Justin?
What's up, Brian, my man? I just want to say I appreciate you having me on the show so far, my man. So shout out to you, my man.
Thanks, and shout out to you. So I originally heard of you and knew of you because of Render Atlanta. I don't know if I even mentioned that in our conversations before. I was already planned on flying out there and going to that event. And then things changed in the last year, as most people know. And right. So yeah, I'm curious of what's your background? How did you get into engineering, and how did you get to the point where now you're hosting events, but also supporting Rebuild Black Business?
Well, we don't have a whole bunch of time, so I'll give you the quick and dirty broken down version. So I went to school at the best school in the whole country, aka Mississippi State University. Shout out to my home team, Hail State all day. But I went there for 5 years, got a bachelor's in what's called business information systems. So it's kind of like the blend of computer science and a business, but I also have a minor in computer science. So I had studied there, did the typical got a job after college, did that, moved on up, and just kept on moving on up. So there isn't anything special about how I went from 0 to 100 now, where I'm a senior engineer at a company here called MailChimp. So I've been there, honestly, 364 days. So December 2nd, 2020 will make a whole year. So
wow, what a year.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. So I work on a team there called the Content and Delivery team, where our team is responsible for everything that you see prior to logging in. So if you go onto the MailChimp.com site and you just play around, more than likely something came off of one of our desks that you see off of there now. But as far as me getting into the EO event world, I've always been passionate about building ecosystems of people to bring together. So I started with the video games club back in high school. I established our first video games club at Henry County High School here in Georgia. And then after that, I did the same exact thing at Mississippi State, where as a huge SEC school, they didn't have any video game club. So I was like, whoa, I can't be the only person on this entire 20,000 student population on campus that enjoyed the art of games. So I started that. That went well. We had a couple hundred people within the first year join. And then after that, I went, like I said, to your standard 9 to 5. I was getting a little bit bored because I do enjoy extracurriculars because I've always been that kind of outgoing person. For anybody that is kind of aware of the Myers-Briggs, I am a ENTJ. So I thrive off of trying to bring people together to achieve a common goal. So I was here in ATL and I was asked like, hey, we want to hire more Black engineers. Where are they at? And I was just wanting to give the feedback of, have you opened your eyes and just seen the population of ATL as a whole? It is a majority Black, and I guarantee you that you're gonna find Black engineers there. So I was told, if you build this quote unquote magical cultural enriched conference, I will come support you. So I went to a conference down in Jackson, Mississippi called Magnolia JS. A shout out to JC. I had gone there, seen how he had organized that quickly and the traction he got, asked a couple key questions, and then a week after that, made the LLC for our conference, hired my team. And then after I hired the team, we just hit the ground going. And honestly, shout out to everybody that's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They came through in waves and just bought up tickets. So we started with 330 tickets. On September 5th of 2019, we actually sold out of the first two categories. And then by time January came, of the 330 tickets, we were down to only about 70-ish. And it was just crazy. And that's honestly because we are a conference that doesn't care about D&I, which everybody's like, whoa, like that sounds crazy. But that's because we care about culture. Because at the end of the day, D&I has become such a bastardized keyword now that a whole lot of companies just like to throw all around just to make a point. So we care about culture, where you come, you're gonna learn a whole lot of tech, but you're also gonna feel that embodiment of the culture as a whole, so that then you could bring that back to your company, and now you will make the change that you want to see within your organization. So if you haven't got your ticket yet, come on out. It's going to be turned.
Yeah, and it's something that I was looking forward to, because the way you pitched it, I think I heard you on the React podcast originally pitch this event probably a year ago, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the events that you host. Not only did you host that, you also hosted, you partnered with Paris and the In Streaming Color as well, which is like in preparation for all this events. being hosted online, like you already were ahead of the game per se. So yeah, you've got a track record, and I'm looking forward to stuff like that. But I wanted to ask about, it's not even a transition because you're still doing your full-time job, you're still doing events,
Right.
but you started a whole nother project, which is Rebuild Black Business. And can you talk about how that came to being?
Right. And I just want to say a shout out to the team at like MailChimp, because they give me the flexibility to also do that and come to conferences like I'm at now. So shout out. But as far as RBB goes, that honestly began in the wake of George Floyd, because what ended up happening after everything was going on was there was a whole lot of rioting and a whole lot of looting going on. And in that, there were attacks on Black-owned businesses. So I remember being at home. This was the week after In Streaming Color, if not the week after, probably like a week or two. And just for context, I was burned out of trying to do anything because, you know, Paris and I put together In Streaming Color within the course of 3.5 weeks. And that had over 50 plus speakers about, and it was taxing on my body. So I was at home on the couch, just like, man, if there's only something I could do. So I went to go take my shower, and I just had a shower thought of, what if we build a ecosystem where Black-owned businesses can come to one, put that they are a business in the area, and two, they could also put that they're doing a campaign to raise dollars for anything that could have hurt them. So such as with the rioting or with the looting or like anything at all, they could have a centralized resource that they could come to include this updated info. And that's because over those couple of weeks, if you could recall, on Twitter, you had seen all these threads of, here are GoFundMes. Here is this link to this fundraiser page to help out this particular business. It wasn't centralized at all. So I would go help one business over here, but then I'll turn around, there's like 20 over there. And I'll turn around, there's like 80 over there. So our goal was to help centralize that. In all of that being said, it then began to evolve into, well, what they actually need is a way to reach out to a centralized organization to get the help and the resources that they need at the ground level. So when they are first beginning out, how do they get to understand what an LLC is? How do they understand what a business bank account is, or even a business credit? How do they understand how to use an integration such as Stripe into their payment platform? These are all things that I took for granted because I am in the space of tech. And just to be honest, I've always operated a business from a very young age because my own parents owned a couple of business. So a lot of this I took for granted. So when I started doing the RBB TV series, where I was just flying around the country talking to different business owners just to help broadcast their story overall, it became very apparent that the need was, we just don't know where to begin. And if I did begin, I have now learned that I did it the wrong way. How do I fix that? So at this time now, RBB is a way to help Black-owned business owners get the help and the resources that they need to not just survive, but also thrive in their ecosystems.
Yeah, and I think the thing you hit on was one of the things I really want to focus on this event. And folks are like, they're curious, like, it's just about hackathon. We're talking about Justin's story, talking about Rebuild Black Business. And the focus of the hackathon was really, there is definitely a place where, like, restaurants, there's other businesses, apparel businesses that have to shut their doors because as they were trying to figure out, some states were more zealous with the shelter in place than others, but every business was affected this year. And having an opportunity to support businesses in general, and especially Black businesses, like, it's close to my heart. Like, having that opportunity to take your skill set as a developer and build websites for for Black businesses and just general businesses, like look in your community. I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but in preparation for this event, there's a children's store that's just right around the corner for me. I can walk to it. And we in the beginning of 2020, we realized that this children's store, no one was shopping in it because they had to close their doors for 2 weeks. And when they did open up with precautions, it was less enticing to go shop for children's clothes, especially if all your kids are doing is it's going to be inside, and like justifying buying a new outfit for my daughter. It didn't make a lot of sense, in March and April. But also what did make sense is I know the owner because we've been shopping there since before my daughter was born, since my son was little. And we know that they were struggling because we had conversations with them. But me being able to leverage my skill set, build a website, get them online, connect them with Stripe payments to be able to take payments. I have a boba tea shop down the street from my house. I'm here in Oakland, and they completely stopped DoorDash and completely stopped Caviar and other programs because they were just taking too big of a cut. And I guess the margins are not as high when it comes to boiling tapioca and making tea drinks. So they actually just went to a phone call only ordering system, which it seems archaic today, but being able to have this opportunity to connect Stripe and connect GitHub and connect all these platforms, like I think these are skill sets we can use today. And I'm super happy and pleased. And I'll drop a link to the Rebuild Black Business too as well, so folks can look at the project you're doing, because this is not just to showcase what you're doing. This is also to showcase like this is what everybody else could do as well with their communities and other businesses as well. I'm curious. Out of the businesses you've helped, you've been traveling as well and doing these YouTube videos as well, which we're gonna show a video after our conversation, so folk can see firsthand what you're doing. But like, what are some of the favorite businesses that you've been able to help and support during this time?
Man, that is such a hard question to answer because I don't want to leave anybody out. But I will say that there's a couple of ones that come to mind each and every time I tell this story. So one would be the Just Add Honey Tea Company here in ATL, where they are a Black-owned local tea shop where they have their inventory made locally here. And their biggest thing was, we need help with advertisements, we need help with our website, we need help with our branding. And now, even though I wasn't able to help them directly at that time, I was able to call together a group of other experts, all in the areas that they needed help with. And they were able to then offer them services that they usually wouldn't be able to know where to even start at. So that kind of like shocked me, and it honestly gave more power to what we're doing, because without that, they wouldn't even know where to begin or how to even price this service or even understand what they need overall. One other company is it's a local moving company back in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is my hometown. And a young man had a moving company, and he needed to get a bank loan. When he went to the bank like, okay, cool, we need to see your tax returns and your LLC, aka your articles of incorporation, and a couple more things. He didn't understand what an LLC even was, which to everybody that's probably tuning in was like, well, you own a business, how do you not understand what an LLC is? But you'll be shocked. There's a huge majority of people out there across the entire self-owned business spectrum that doesn't even understand that there aren't operating income clients. So he didn't know who to turn to, and the banker recommended us like, hey, there's this a company called RBB. They will help you get started. And then we were able to sit down with them, tell them what an LLC was, offered our services through an affiliate, and that was a lawyer to help them get set up. And our services are completely free. What we do is we connect them with our partners, aka our affiliates, to help get the job done. And then the very last one is this one small company that I just had interviewed called a Fly Dive. their story actually began over their first date, where they were doing tie-dyes, and they had the idea of, I do wonder if we could sell these things. I wonder if people will be interested, all on their first date. So then they just had posted it on IG, and the overall response was overwhelming, to the point where even Big Sean had replied, because they had did an interpretation of a popular picture that he did with Janae Aiko in a tie-dye clothing. So even he caught a wind of it. And I was like, wow, this is so empowering, because this is a small business that just now began, but they're already getting so much traction. And I really love to hear that, because a lot of people don't understand that in this country, in the USA, 80% of small owned businesses are expected to fail within their first 5 years. So let's make this easy. You hold up 10, you have put down 8, then that's only 2 of them are supposed to actually make it out. Of that, it gets even more drastic for Black owned businesses, because of those 10, let's just be honest, maybe one of them is a Black owned business. So, due to COVID, it came out that over 40% of Black owned businesses are supposed to close by the end of 2020, or at the end of COVID, because they just weren't able to get traction. So when I hear stories like that, I'm like, wow, this is why I'm so passionate about RBB, because we are standing in the middle of trying to prevent more closures of very valuable businesses that are honestly needed within the Black community. So I encourage everybody to come check us out, and the entire project is open source too. So yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, appreciate you open and sourcing that too as well. And just a reminder, folks, that we're hosting this event and this hackathon. So we did have the repo that's out there, has all the instructions if you want to participate in hackathon. The goal was really leverage a template to build a model for a business, or leverage it to get your business online. And I think that's a lot of valuable information just in that itself. And I think when you talk about the LLC, like that's stuff that like I'm aware of, but I don't have a lot of experience in when it comes to LLCs and all that information. If I wanted to get a business online to help the store, oops, just knocking stuff over, but help the store downstairs, the little kid store that I mentioned, help them advance their business, help them stay not stagnant during this time, but also grow their business and get their business online. There's so much opportunity there for you to take your skill set and help your business, but also get more skill set. So if you've never used Stripe, if you've never used Next.js, I see some people are saying that they're still leveling up on React. The beauty of it is Next.js, they actually do a lot of the work for you. So because we have a template that's already powered by Next.js, for the most part, you're moving around copy at first. And then when you want to add new features, you can go ahead and deep dive and ask those questions, which is what Becca just showed us with the discussions. You could actually jump in there, ask questions, and then folks will answer those questions for you, answer the technical questions. So jump there, don't be shy, jump in there, answer questions. And then really quick, you mentioned the open source part of it. And I remember you tweeting out earlier this year about you open sourcing the RBB site. And could you talk a bit about how you sort of collaborated and got people excited to give you free help, I guess? Not only you giving free help to these businesses, but you got free help from some of these open source contributors as well.
Yeah, so to this day, when anybody asks me about that, I am in complete shock, because I honestly don't understand how people were just able to come give me a free help for a whole week. So I am eternally grateful to everybody that came and helped out, and the people that are still helping out. Overall, though, the thing about it was, like I had talked about earlier, this was in response to the protesting going on during the murder of George Floyd. So when everything going down, and I had the idea, I began tweeting about it, which then attracted other people who had said, I have a skill set, but I don't want to go marching. I have a skill set, but I'm too scared to go outside because of COVID. So how do I actively participate in a cause that I know needs my help? So when they joined, it had dawned on me when I was doing an interview for a plug that this is a form of a protest. And the plug called it a nerd protest. And I was like, yeah, this is a nerd protest. And that had really resonated with people because for once they had felt like their efforts were being valued, even though they aren't the one that's on TV or they're not the ones being front news on the newspaper. So the main thing to get people rallied was just give them an outlet to express all of their frustrations with the things that they want to see right in the world.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the work you've been doing. Folks, if you stick around, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to show a video of Justin interviewing some of these businesses. Check out rebuildblackbusiness.com. Check out the GitHub repo as well. You'll find it. Just go ahead and Google it or search it on Google it on GitHub. Search it on GitHub. You'll find it pretty quickly. Rebuild Black Business. If you're interested in contributing your technical help, your expertise, or if you just learning to level up. I believe it's also built in React as well.
Yeah, so it's built in React.js, and actually we're about to start incorporating Next.js. So if you're trying to get some levels up, we have issues on there that you could then use. So yeah, and hey, just a quick thing. Can I give a quick shout outs?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So I just want to say shout out to my team at Render ATL. They've been holding it down, even though COVID has been a huge setback. So shout out to Mo, Rick, April, Hank, Reba, and everybody else. I also want to give a shout out to the Gathering Spot. They've been truly helping me out in terms of trying to pivot during these tough times. Shout out to the co-owners, Ryan and TK. They've been truly helping me out all times of the day, all times of the night. On top of that, shout out to this one group called Black Professionals in Tech Network out of Canada. They've had a crazy growth during COVID because they've been helping people advance in their careers overall, despite the current circumstances. And they do this completely free of charge. So if you are trying to advance your career in tech, even though that they are out of Canada, they do help down here in the US with over 20,000 people in their network. Shout out to Paris with a Black Tech Pipeline. I've been keeping track of all the work that they've been doing to help Black people get more involved in tech overall, and they've been doing fantastic work. So if you're trying to get your next opportunity in tech and you have jobs, please reach out to them. Also, shout out to Vets Who Code. Shout out to Jerome. It is Giving Tuesday. So please go help an organization that is helping our most brave come back from the front lines and get a job in tech through an actual skill set that's going to be good for now and in the foreseeable future to come. So, Giving Tuesday, check them out, please. And I think that, and I got one more one. I have to always make sure I
got a list.
Yeah, look, but yeah, shout out to my trainer over at Fort Quarter Performance. His name is Josh, doing a great work. Small, Black-owned gym, but it feels like the next best thing up and coming. If you are here in the ATL area, please go check them out. They will get you the results that you truly want for now and for the years to come. So yeah, I think that's everybody.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate you, Justin. Thanks for taking the time and sharing your story and what you're working on. And folks, stay tuned. We're going to set up for our next speaker, which is going to be Lauren Williams from Go Naked Hair Brands. And yeah. And check out the link that I've been dropping in the chat and for the hackathon as well.
Everybody has the potential. education that our culture needs or our community needs to see that we can actually be doing the same thing and building that future wealth that other people are coming in and snatching up from us. I define future wealth as planting the seeds in the garden that you'll probably never see. So literally, you're always thinking about what can I do right now that's going to help not only myself up, but the future iterations of my family and me. So as a realtor, we definitely are multifaceted. We're handling and bringing together a deal at any given moment. So we have clients that I'm checking in with in the morning. There are properties that I'm checking out in the afternoons, and definitely putting together a lot of communications and connecting people in order to actually consummate what it is that's going to bring wealth from one person to another person and then record it. So COVID has been a major shift in not only our market, but every market around. But I will say what's ironic is that I've had our best year yet with over, I think in the last couple months, over 2 million in closed volume. And compared to this time last year, it was kind of, just maybe sub a million to do that. COVID kind of pushed you to be more efficient, to be more focusing on what it is that your operations were. So leaning into what the shift is actually, leading into digital spaces, leaning into how it is that you connect and how it is that you actually procure. COVID forced, I would say, not only myself, but especially Tire Consulting to drill down and become more effective in the use of our time and what we're actually going after to keep our business afloat, and not even afloat, but honestly thriving and successful. So getting into the business, I'm a very academic person, so I definitely thought it was going to be, go get your license, I'm a check boxer. Go after it, check your box, get your license, do this. You just sit on actually your degree, or your licensure. But really this business is all about, I wish I would have known it was more relational, more like actually how to, not just networking in a cliche networking way, but actually building real relationships with people and figuring out how you can actually serve them in a way that benefits their life and helps them to reach their goals, as well as which helps you consequently in your business, helps you to reach your goals in anything. So I wish I would have known more about the relational building aspect and not being the check boxer like I normally tend to be. But after I kind of got that down and really linked up with some really great mentors in the space and who really helped me to mold and shape my own practice, my own business, that has really been the leverage I needed to kind of take off.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Andre Williams. I'm an independent financial advisor from Atlanta, Georgia. That's the state that's making waves in this country right now. I've basically been doing this for 18 years, and my job is to help people create financial independence. So what does that mean? Everybody has the potential. They have wealth potential, but people really don't tap into it oftentimes. So what I do is teach, educate, and strategize. Help people understand the opportunities they have before them and how to take advantage of them. At the end of the day, I want people to be able to live their best life on their own terms. The way I work with individuals is oftentimes it's financial planning, where I'm actually engaging with them to understand their financial situation fully. If you have mortgages, student loans, trying to get the kids to go to college, you got retirement to think about, mom and dad need a little bit of financial assistance, you want to buy a new car, trying to grow your business. How do you bring all this stuff together comprehensively and be able to do all these things? Where it seems like you're juggling a lot of things, it can be a little bit stressful, a little bit nerve-wracking. I try to come in and help make sense of all of it to put you on, again, that path towards reaching all your goals. You may not be able to do them all at one time, so you might have to kind of prioritize some of those goals you have, but really kind of giving you the blueprint that's going to ultimately help you succeed with all those goals that you have for yourself. So what is something a person could do to improve their financial health at this time? I'd probably say that one of the key things that I find people do or don't do is effectively manage their cash flows. And the reason why they don't manage their cash flows is because they take their incomes for granted. I've got this check, 2 weeks from now I'm gonna get another check, or if I get paid monthly, so I can spend all this and I know I'm gonna re-up in about another month or so. That is, to me, very detrimental. Obviously, we can see with the pandemic, some of y'all's incomes might have changed. The bonuses you were getting, the comp structure has changed. You might have been furloughed. You might be laid off right now. But if you effectively manage your cash flows better, that's probably the first step that you could take to actually improving your overall financial health. So that gets to the basics, a budget. Not only a budget, but a budget you actually stick to. People think that they have a budget in their head, but if you go out and see how they spend, look at their credit cards, look at their bank statements, there's a lot of frivolous spending that takes place, and they're not managing their cash flow. What you want to have is every dollar accounted for on a monthly basis. So if I make $8,000 this month, then every single dollar, that $8,000, some of it's going to bills, some of it's going towards cash reserves, some of it might be paying off debts or what have you. Some of it should be going to savings and investment, but that's one of the line items that people don't have. So I really try to help people understand, here's what you got coming in, here's what's going out, and some of that stuff that's going out is a lot of extracurricular spending that shouldn't be taking place that you need to kind of check. So if you do that and start actually having more discipline with your money, you'll find down the road that you'll have, you'll be in a better cash position from a cash reserve perspective, as well as a wealth position from asset accumulation. So if you want to contact me, I'll put my number out there. Y'all can call me. Y'all, we connected. Y'all my people. Y'all can call me at 678-480-9948. Now, if you call me, be ready to get to work. Because the brother is kind of busy these days, you know. But I'm blessed to be able to have great clients and great relationships.
Excellent. So that was Rebuild Black Business. That's the RBB YouTube channel. Definitely check it out. There's going to be some more content out there that Justin's releasing on a weekly basis at this point, it seems like. But we're going to move on this program. I've got our second guest here, who is Lauren Williams. Lauren is a co-founder of Go Naked Hair Brands, entrepreneur, and based out of Atlanta. Lauren, do you want to say hello?
Hi, guys.
Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for taking, I mean, you're a busy individual. You've got a lot going on, and you've taken some time out of the day to talk to us, some developers, some entrepreneurs, future business owners, and we want to learn more about you and your story. So do you want to give a background of you and what you're doing out there in Atlanta, and so how you got there?
Yeah, definitely. My sister and I started this company about 7 or 8 years ago. She decided to get on reality TV. And we were like, we need to figure out how to make money with this. We can't just, you know, be getting all these followers and all this attention. There's got to be something more to it. We wanted to, you know, follow in our dad's footsteps and own a business. So we had no idea what we were doing, but we decided to start. It's honestly the best way to start because you learn a lot that way. So we went ahead and got with a vendor, and she apparently knew some people in China. She was like on our computer in her living room and things like that. And we were able to get the product shipped in. So we were like, all right, cool, we'll ship it ourselves. That was kind of our first step into this. We did not have a website. We had a PayPal and an email. So customers would email their order and I would send them a PayPal invoice. They'd pay the invoice and then I'd ship the order. It was not efficient, but you know, it was our way of starting. So we did that for maybe a year or so. Back then the hair industry was not, there weren't a lot of people in the hair industry. Not folks like us, I'll put it that way. So we were one of few. And so we had amazing sales. I mean, I'm pretty sure we were doing 6 figures in the first month of opening the company. And this is not even having a website. This is on PayPal and email. And so I was packing them in my bedroom, you know, doing it myself, ordering the shipping from Uline. And, you know, we started out like a lot of businesses do, literally in a bedroom. And so as we went along, we opened other businesses. We stopped paying attention to the hair company. It just kind of fell to the back. We did a lingerie company. We did waist trainers. I think we've opened almost every type of company. And we did headbands too. We just got excited and started opening e-commerce because we were so familiar with Shopify. I'm like, we can do anything. And just found out that profit margin wise and in terms of keeping up the revenue and demand, hair was really where it was. And everyone else started opening hair companies. And we're like, well, we did that first. Let's go back to it. So about 3 years ago, we put more funds and attention into the hair company. And that's where we are now. And now, you know, it's booming and we're doing great and still have struggles. But because things like that, you know, happened to us in the beginning and we made mistakes, there was even a time when we, of course, because our vendors are on WhatsApp. So, you know, we're talking to vendors, people we don't know, getting, you know, referrals. And we sent someone an email. Her name was Sarah. and Sarah Chen, I think her name was. And I sent Sarah an email. She said, okay, I'll send you a sample. Got the sample. It was great, great sample. So I said, okay, I'm going to order $50,000 worth of hair from you. She said, okay, great. I said, great. And so I sent Sarah, wired Sarah the money, of course, bad idea. Never wire money. Wired Sarah $50,000. And 2 months later, got a package of plastic hair, which we don't sell.
Oh, wow.
We sell human hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I don't have a lot of hair myself, but I know that's not good.
Okay. Right. Exactly. That wasn't good. So my $50,000 went down the drain. Sarah shut down her email and never talked to her again. So we've made those kinds of mistakes. And so we are where we are now, which I think is in a good place. But as an entrepreneur, you're just waiting for that next mistake, but you've learned so much that you're pretty confident that even if you do make a mistake, you can get through it.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you alluded to that you and your sister started this business, specifically the hair business first, in preparation to reality TV. Are you able to share where your sister is currently? I was going to say acting, but it's reality TV, being a reality TV star.
Herself. Exactly.
Yeah.
She honestly gets paid to be herself. She's literally that funny. She is on Real Housewives of Atlanta. She is doing Dish Nation, which is another, it's scripted, but it's a lot of personality in there. It's kind of like TMZ. She's also doing Chat Room with Bravo. So it's a very Dish-like show. You know, they just talk about current events and things that are happening on Bravo shows. So yeah, she literally gets paid to be herself because she's just a naturally funny person.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a really awesome gig. And it's not like, hats off to you and your sister for setting up structure to be able to have a brand. And I think even as like developers, like I'm a full-time developer advocate at GitHub, and like I have a brand, but I don't necessarily do anything too much with it. But I know a lot of developers, even sitting in this chat right now, like they have ideas for products, like they can build a product and they have ideas for courses and curriculum. And that's what we're trying to do with this event, is give you all the tools that you could also set yourself up to be able to set up if you want a brand, or if you just want to do courses, or you just want to put yourself out there, like you have the opportunity to that. And you mentioned Shopify, Shopify being an awesome platform to get started with as well. So I'm curious, your background, do you have like a technical background, or how did you sort of learn all these things?
Oh no, I figured it out by messing it up. I have no technical background. I also learned by paying developers a lot of money. So having that technical background, being a developer, I mean, you have a unique ability to do what you need to do for your company, for your website. I mean, I didn't even know what SEO was until a couple of years ago. So, all those things, those were obstacles that we had to overcome. So having that knowledge base and having the ability to do that yourself, I mean, I probably spend, I'm going to say at least 20% of my profit on paying people, developers, and people who know more than I do to get that stuff done. So, I mean, you're keeping 20% of your profit margin. That can't be bad.
No, not at all. And like the folks that we just talked with, Justin Samuels, and he is a developer, senior developer at MailChimp, and he was able to take his skill set and build what we don't think of a conference as a product, but he was able to build a conference and actually have a product out of that. And he was able to do all the technical side himself. So like, again, folks, like this event is really here to encourage you to take the leap, take the jump. As we heard, Lauren, you started with PayPal and email to get your business off the ground.
Oh yeah, PayPal and email. So if you can throw together a Shopify theme, you're ahead of me.
Excellent. And then I know nowadays, like the idea of drop shipping has got really popular in the last couple of years, really, but like even bigger, like just recently, because now we have less businesses are going to start opening up a shop in the mall. Like, I'm not sure how many people are going to the mall these days. My mall is sort of open, but it's been a while since I've been there. And so like getting started, like, can you explain like how you sort of handle the product and how you do the shipping? I know you talked about your mishap. So like, what are some sort of the structures that you're doing today to make sure stuff like getting plastic hair doesn't happen again?
Yes, definitely. After that mishap, I went to a few more people that I knew that were already ordering from vendors. And of course, they sold me their hair at 3 times the cost. So at this point, I'm making almost $2 off of each product. I've got 300 SKUs and I'm making no money off of any of them. It it just wasn't working. So I went to a friend of mine and he said, hey, I know a drop shipper. He's here in Atlanta. Of course, hair, it comes from India and China, but he's here in Atlanta. You could actually work with somebody on the ground. Why don't you try drop shipping? And I'm like, I never trust drop shipping. You never know what they're going to ship out. You know, I think people think of drop shipping as lower quality. And you think, oh, you never know what's going out. You would literally have to do quality checks every month. And I think people are afraid of drop ship a lot of the time. But it really is good. If you get with a good drop shipper, if you have someone here on the ground that you can talk to, it's amazing. So we went from packaging our own packages, you know, having staff actually packaging them, to a drop ship company. And what he does is he actually buys our packaging. He buys any insert cards, like, thanks for buying Go Naked Hair. Any inserts, he buys everything that he needs to ship it out to a customer. And he's got a plug-in to Shopify. So again, developer could figure this out. I couldn't, but you know, he was able to actually log in, you know, into the back end of my Shopify and able to see my orders come through. I pay for the orders, he ships them. Very simple. This was something that I had been spending years on. I mean, years to figure out, you know, because when it comes to dealing with a product that people need right now, you have to figure out your shipping process. It's not something that, oh, you just ship it, it's easy. No, it's not. Not when you have 80 orders and you have 2 hours to get it out to USPS, or when USPS starts losing packages. Anything can happen. So, I mean, you're going to take a risk when it comes to actually, you know, shipping your order. Of course, your profit margin is better because you're not paying anyone to do it. But with dropship, if you can find a good drop shipper and they're not charging you an arm and a leg, it's amazing. Now, what I have also learned with dropship is that there are certain months in any industry that aren't going to do as well. So in the hair industry, there are about 3 months a year. And for some reason, people just don't buy hair. I have no idea why. These 3 particular months, I really don't know. They don't buy hair in those months. In March, it goes right back up.
Is it well, I was just curious, what months are those? I imagine summertime maybe because the heat maybe? No, not even then. Okay.
December, January, and February.
Oh, maybe
sales,
hats.
Yeah, sales go down every year. We've been open 7, 8 years, and every time sales just go down in those months. I don't know if people are buying more for other people because you've got, you know, Christmas, you've got Valentine's Day. I'm not exactly sure why. I haven't done the research on it, but it happens every year. So the thing with dropship is within those months, you've got a really low profit margin. So the best thing to do is try to take it in-house. So we kind of do a hybrid. So we do dropship most months. If we see that our revenue is going to go down in a month, then we just start shipping. So you don't have to think of a company as, okay, I'm doing a dropship company, it can only be dropship. No, if your dropship company is doing really well, you can say, you know what, I have enough money to set up an infrastructure and start shipping this stuff myself for these next couple of months because I need a bigger profit margin these next couple of months. I've just learned in business, you have to adapt and you have to like move and flow with what's happening and not be so set in whatever you thought it was going to be. And that just helps you to keep the money in, keep the profit going.
Yeah, staying flexible and staying nimble and like even understanding the business side of it, understanding that there is a cyclical nature when it is selling hair. And I'm sure you probably figured this out with other businesses because it sounds like you've done quite a few and like maybe you've decided to actually shut down some of them too based on that sort of research.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, do you want to talk about, well, you said most of them, like what's one of the more notable ones that you had to make that decision and find out it wasn't working?
Yeah, we had a lingerie company. And it was the same deal. They said, hey, just drop ship with us. We said, okay. And we realized we were making like 5% of the profits. Like we're seeing all this revenue and we weren't getting much of it. So it just didn't make sense to keep putting a staff member on it and keep paying someone a salary to manage it and things like that. Also with lingerie, same thing. We didn't do it for an entire year. So I can't tell you if it is cyclical in terms of what months it didn't do well, but at one point it just didn't do well. It just stopped. I mean, all the revenue stopped coming in. We're like putting out ads. We're doing all the same things we had been doing, and it just stopped working. I'm sure if we went another year, we would start to see the pattern and understand it. But we're like, what the heck is going on? And because our profit margin was so bad with that particular company, we were like, all right, you know, this was cute. It was a cool little brand. It was cool. We did a pop-up shop. You know, we had some fun with it. But it just wasn't a company that we felt like we could scale without actually going overseas and making our product ourselves. Because we were buying from someone in LA, you know, we were paying, you know, 4 times as much as they were paying to make it, probably 10, 60 times, honestly. So, you know, we figured if we want to really, sometimes you have to think about a product and you have to say, okay, do I want to sell this product just to make some money off of it? Because, I mean, of course you can. I have a friend, he has a company and he sells like little kitchen appliances. I think he sells earphones, things like that. And I think he probably pays his rent every month. You know what I mean? It's cute and it happens and, you know, that's fine. But when you're talking about investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in a company like the hair company, like we've done, we really had to say, okay, we have to invest in our product. We have to make sure that, you know, we get to the bottom price. And so that's why we looked so long for a dropship before going with the one that we have. And even then, we still take it wholesale sometimes and go ahead and ship it ourselves.
Yeah, that is amazing too as well. And like being able to be nimble, and sometimes we could be stuck in our ways and maybe think that we have the term that I was thinking when you talked about the product and finding it, like product market fit is something that in the business world, you read a business book, people mention that, and like it sounds like you found product market fit with the hair business. And I'm curious, like your background too as well. I don't make assumptions, but like, were you already involved? Like, was you already a consumer of the hair business and already like knowledgeable in the industry before going into this?
So my sister was. She had a lot of experience with it. She's the glamorous one. She's, you know, always going to have the big hair and the makeup and stuff like that. So she was really interested in the hair industry. And there was a company, I think they closed down now. There was a company that came to Atlanta. They were in Buckhead, and they were selling like $700 bundles of hair. I mean, ridiculous the price now that I think back on it. But they were sourcing it. They were going to India, getting the hair and coming back. So it was hair that we had never seen before. It was on a level that you couldn't get from, you know, the beauty supply stores. And she was like, if they're doing this, we could do this. And so that was kind of her first thought. And she found, like I said, she found someone who could communicate with the vendors, and we went from there. But definitely, I think in my opinion, when you are trying to pick that perfect product, it has to be something that you either have a passion for or you have a unique amount of knowledge about. You know, like she really knew hair. She could touch it and be like, this is going to be bad. This is going to tangle in 3 days. We're not selling this. She could do that. She had that ability. And that's why we were able to start the company from where we were and, you know, and grow from there. So definitely when you're picking, like right now I have, you know, the mask company. It's super simple. I wear it every day. Before I even started the company, I had worn the mask, I think for 3 months. We were in here protesting in Atlanta, you know, in the middle of the street. And I felt protected. I was like, this is something that I believe in. I'm going to do this. And I like style. So I was like, oh, I want something cute. You know, honestly, you just have to connect to the product. You can't just sell something, anything. If you want to sell anything, that's fine. If you're just making a little bit of money. When you're talking about scaling a company, you're talking about doing it forever. You really want to love it. You really want to be attached to it. You really want to believe in it, because it's going to be easy to sell at that point. Then work isn't, it's just, you know, telling people about something you'd be talking about anyways.
Yeah, excellent. And like speaking of what we're talking about today, the Floss the Code event, it's really focused around giving all these tools, like the things that you talked about and the operations of your business. We're handing these tools to developers to help build their brands and build sites for communities and also encourage their brand. And I wanted to actually shift gears and talk about the brands that you have and how you've managed those and how you've got those out in the open. Like I have a lot of assumptions, like with the influencer marketing page, like you have a great Instagram account as well. So like, what are some ways that you've sort of found ways to get the name out there? Even because I assume you sell outside of Atlanta as well at this point.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Actually, I think most of our customers are in Texas right now. I looked the other day and I was like, that's interesting.
Wow.
We have like Nexus in Texas. I'm like, why am I paying taxes in Texas? But it makes sense. And California as well. So California, New York, and Atlanta. Those are our 4 big markets. But yeah, no, in terms of, you know, getting this product out to everyone, we, in the beginning, of course, we use our Instagrams because we had followers. We're like, all right, we're gonna use our Instagrams. And at one point, that just stopped working. Like, I have no idea what happened. There wasn't a shift in Instagram. It wasn't an algorithm change. It just at one point, and I'll say it was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, us posting did not have the impact that it did. We used to be able to post and literally 400 sales would come in. And this is when we had half the followers that we had. It just got, I don't know if Instagram or the hair industry became saturated, but it just got to a point where it wasn't just enough to post on Instagram. It wasn't enough to have followers. And I understand, I've actually spoken to a few social media people. They're like, hey, you can have 1 million, 5 million followers. I think Portia's got 5, 6 million followers, but if they don't trust you, they're not going to buy from you. So I think with us, the way we've been able to retain our customers and continue to get new customers is we always post about the same hair company. You know what I mean? I think a lot of companies go with influencers. They're like, oh, we're going to pay you once to post. People aren't going to trust that. They know they got paid. I mean, we know the game at this point. Let's be real. You know, so you really, when you're talking about influencers, I wouldn't put the biggest budget towards it, one, but I do think there is a benefit. So when you do put a budget towards it, I would put a budget towards longevity with influencers that have people that trust them, that their followers are like, oh, you know, we trust her. You know, they probably don't have 6 million followers. They probably have 200,000 followers, and they're loyal and they trust them. And that's kind of what I've learned with the influencer marketing. Being an influencer myself as well, when companies come to me, I'm like, you can pay me, but you know, you're going to need to make sure that you're doing what you need on your end for this to convert. Because otherwise, you just pay me to post, and now I've got the money and you're going on your way. So you want to make sure you're thinking around the entire agreement when you're working with an influencer. The other way that we've gotten our product out there is, of course, you know, of Portia shows and things like that. But interviews. She did an interview, I think, with Allure magazine, and it helped so much just having that point. You guys are gonna have to tell me what it is. Someone said it had to do with SEO.
Yeah, SEO. Yeah.
So it was Allure magazine, People magazine. You know, getting your website pointed from bigger websites.
Yes,
or
it
any
has to
other
be
website.
clickable. Yeah.
Clickable, exactly. And that was, I was like, that's not gonna work. And it really helped. I still get sales from that article today, and it was like 3 years ago. So, you know, having that PR element really helps. Things like that. I don't think you really have to hire a publicist. A lot of the times you really can reach out and, you know, have a unique spin on, you know, why they should help you promote your product and things like that. Other than that, you just have a good product and encourage your customers to tell other people. And retargeting is life. I mean, honestly, retargeting, Facebook, Google, email. I mean, I think after someone buys something from me, 3 months later, they get a text, they get an email, their mom shows up at their front door, like everything, you know, retargeting and going back to those customers really helps because they tell their friends, or if you give them a discount code and say, hey, give this discount code to your friend, referrals. I mean, the traditional stuff really works. You just do it, you know, you just make sure you do it.
Yeah.
And these days, a lot of it is automated. You guys know that better than I do. A lot of it is really automated. You really can run a company by pressing a button every morning and walking away from it. It's passive for some people.
Yeah. And shout out to GitHub Actions folks who are developers on the platform. You know, GitHub Actions will do automation for you and help trigger those events. But I mean, it's mind-boggling how it sounds simplistic. I know there was a lot of effort and a lot of sweat equity that went into this. But I do want to just shout out the chat too as well. What really resonated with them, I think it sort of clicked for them, is the customer trust. Like getting that trust and understanding like who your customer is and what they're willing to purchase, and make sure you don't break that trust either with bad hair or bad product. That's a super valuable takeaway. And I see one of my coworkers in the chat saying he low-key wants to start a hair business now.
It's a huge industry. Come on in. I mean, there's money for everybody. I've never not encouraged someone to get in it. I actually know a company, and all they do is market to people wanting to start hair companies. And they are a hair company. So you would think they wouldn't want to create competition. But when you get in a big industry like this, no one's competing with each other. We know it's out there. We know people are going to need hair. They want to have big hair tomorrow or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely. No need to compete. Just come on in.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, everybody's got room for, you got to look good for your Zoom calls as we continue to do this sheltering in place, remote work. It's everything from the waist up.
Yeah, and actually, when you said that, it made me think about the fact that I think in March, when everything started happening with COVID, I was super nervous. I was, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? No one's gonna want to buy hair. They're sitting at home. Nobody can see them. Like, I'm just thinking the company's gonna shut down. And we did wonderful. And, in March, I think we usually do really well in March, but I think we did maybe 3 or 4 times the normal amount of sales. And I was in shock but it happens, you know, you just don't know what with your industry, what people are going to value and what they're going to deem necessary. So, you know, don't get discouraged when things happen. You just stay steady and, you know, keep that trust up.
Yeah. The flexibility of having like the sort of hybrid model that you're doing with the drop shipping, like being able to adjust during the ebbs and flows as the product is in high demand and when it's not in demand. So yeah, it's fascinating to hear this part of it, because I'm making a correlation for developers who are now listening in this chat and having a conversation. Like, one, product market fit, connecting and making trust with the end user. A lot of what happens with developers, like we build like the small little tools, like the Shopify tools, just for fun, and then sometimes that takes off. But a lot of times we don't do the whole marketing angle of it, or actually go and connect to the podcast and go connect to the blog post as well.
Yeah, let us know about it. I mean, as a business owner, I'm always looking for things that'll help me. Like, just for example, selling wigs. Selling wigs, it seems super easy. You put it up, you take a picture, boom. But sometimes people want to see it on them. So I've always told, you know, everyone I speak to, I'm like, if we could create some way where they could literally see our product on them, we could probably sell it 10 times more. Or with wigs, it's customized. So you have to actually create like almost like a type form, so that you can say, what color do you want it? Do you have a, you know, all this stuff, like all this customization that goes into hair. If someone could make that easier or just visually more pleasing, because sometimes, you know, you have the little things, but they're ugly. If you make it visually pleasing, or if you're able to create, you know, some software in the background where the customer is having an experience and not feeling like she's just answering questions, things like that really help to sell. I mean, that's what gets your customer to buy. When you talk about a conversion rate on a website, you can have a website and you can have all of your products on there. You can have great prices, you can have a great product, but if the experience isn't good, people are gonna be like, all right, this website's boring, I'm gone. And you can retarget all day, but if they didn't have a good experience on your website, they're not coming back.
Yeah, indeed. So speaking about coming back, how can people, I'm going to wind down the conversation so we can move on to our next guest, but how can people connect with you? How can they connect with your brands and find out more what you're working on?
Yeah, you can visit gonakedhair.com, GONAKED, naked, just how it sounds. I know it's weird. Gonakedhair.com. And I also just started Real Life Snacks. So those are our two companies. And I'm on Low D Will on the gram. So you can find me at Low D Will, LODWILL.
Excellent. Lauren, thank you so much for unleashing all the knowledge for us and folks. It seems like a lot of people are inspired about this hair business. So low-key, everybody, like, reach out, follow Lauren,
Yeah, email
Will
me
on Instagram.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
my email is my Instagram name at Gmail. So you can email me, ask me questions, come on in the business.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And folks, stick around. We're going to have more context. We have a workshop later on with Stripe and Vercel. But next, we're going to play a quick video, take a little break, and prep our next guest, who's going to be Nick DeJesus, who's open source maintainer for Use Shopping Cart and Stripe integration with React hooks to get your businesses working in the code. So yeah, stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.
perhaps I guess want to do this little exercise. If we grabbed an issue, could you talk out loud like how you would approach it? Perhaps in like maybe give someone like sort of like an underhand pitch.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe I'm not sure
I
how
think
you
the
do
first
this.
one was actually yeah.
Okay.
So the first one was a pretty good one to walk through because it's like adding a new functionality to the create next step.
Okay,
app.
excellent.
So in this case, this person created a bug report being like, hey, I want to basically send -e or -s example to create next step with the value of default to basically pick out the default example, right? So previously, like what we did in like older versions of Next was like we just gave you the default example, but now we basically ask you like, hey, do you want to install this example or do you want to use the default value? And this is where like this broke basically for his use case because he wanted to use like this in CI or something like that. So it should basically auto select default when you do -e default. So basically like bypassing that check for, hey, do you want to create a example? Do you want to use an example?
Yeah.
So basically I replied like, hey, we'd be happy to like add this functionality -e default. So someone already created a pull request for this.
Yeah, this is James.
But it actually is, yeah. So this is like some like contributor that is pretty active on the project and that tries to help out in good first issues. But given that we don't have that much time, it actually might make sense to like go into this like pull request because it basically shows like which changes were made to make this happen, and it wasn't made by me, right? So
yeah,
if you go into the diff, you basically because it's only one file. So create next step is that package, right? Packages create next step, and that has an index.ts, which is the create next step command. And then what it does is basically it checks if like example is set there. So you have create app with the example parameter on line 171.
Yeah.
Or 72 now.
Yep.
But basically what this allows you to do is provide like which example has to be installed. So what is like if you don't provide an example, it just assumes that it's the default template. And so basically what James, if I remember correctly, did was he moved out the check for that to check if it's a string. And then, well, basically it's the same code, but then basically he added in the extra check. So example, if example exists and example is not default, then provide example, and otherwise do undefined. So what this means is that if the example is set to default, it will be undefined, so it installs the default template.
Awesome, and like this seems like super approachable too, as well. Like it also does take like knowing where to look, but the solutions seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So overall, like this is just like a one-line change, right? But even if it's a larger change, like it's generally like in one or two locations that you have to like make these changes. So yeah, this is a great pull request that's done by like an external contributor. And we still have to review it, of course, but like overall, it looks pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, so I appreciate you walking through that too as well. That's gonna, it'd be helpful for a lot of people to see. Not only did we walk into this and like see how packages work and see how the testing works too as well, because that's a lot of times like I can open up a PR, but I have no idea how to get the test to run. So like knowing where the tests live and sort of like some of the hoops you have to jump through, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And welcome back, everyone who's been here with us all morning. If you just arrived and were wondering what you're watching, that was me and Tim from Next.js contributing to a good first issue. I dropped a link in the chat to Dev2 post where I provide more context in that conversation and what we do on the live streams every Friday for Open Source Friday, talking to maintainers to contribute. But today, as part of the Floss and Code Hackathon, the Hack Week, we are going to invite Nick De Jesus to talk about his project and how he got into maintaining open source. So without further ado, Nick, I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Hey everybody, my name is Nick. My first true love was React Native, but over the past year or so, I seem to have really taken a liking for the Jamstack. You know, my story is I'm really big into gaming. If you know about anything about me, you'd know that like I can't go 5 minutes without talking about a fighting game called Tekken. And so I made this app for Tekken. It was doing really well. It's called T7 Chicken Plus. I had over 30,000 users, and I felt like after reaching that amount of users, it was time for me to sort of monetize somehow. And I wanted to start with something easy, like a swag store, right? But you know, I realized that building your own e-commerce store as an ignorant, naive developer, I was like, how hard can it be, right? I realized that that is extremely hard to do. And so out of all of my pain and frustration and never wanting to work on shopping cart logic or anything ever again, I decided to make this library called Use Shopping Cart. If you go to useshoppingcart.com, you can see that this is the doc site right here. And also one thing to note is that I am paying attention to the YouTube chat. So if anybody has questions for me about, you know, building the library or whatever, I'm actually going to be paying attention. For now, I'm just going to kind of gloss over the stuff that I've built and maybe do a little bit of a dive on the actual code itself. So here we have the doc site. This is actually done with Gatsby and MDX. I'm using a theme under the hood. Oh, I forgot. I think it's called like Rocket Seed or something. But these are the things that, you know, this cart, my hooks library provides. It's tightly integrated with Stripe. It handles all of your fundamental shopping cart logics. You know, it's got utilities for handling server-side stuff. It's tested. Oh, I don't have an emoji for this one, Jamstack friendly. I don't know what the Jamstack emoji would be. If anyone has an idea, let me know. The cool thing about this site, it's using MDX under the hood. The docs are actually interactive. So, you know, you have your add item function here, you know, which typically just adds the products to your shopping cart. And we have this example product data right here. So actually, I have a big update coming. Well, it's not that big, but we're not going to use SKU anymore. We're going to use ID. Oh, I like that. The guitar. I'm going to throw that in there. Or you can make that pull request, Brian. So yeah, I have this array here and the object and just your typical stuff like the name of the product, the description, bananas. I like bananas. That's the only structure you need for this library. And so you can go ahead and add items to the cart, and you can see on the right, this is what your shopping cart data looks like. You can see it takes the SKU and makes it, oh, it doesn't actually look exactly like this, but it takes the SKU that it has here, which is supposed to be ID, and makes that the key for the entire object. It's got your price information. It has the formatted version of what you want. If you passed in a different currency for euros or something, it would show up appropriately. And you can keep adding things to the cart. You see those numbers increase. You know, this is really good for your e-commerce store. You can add things by 10 and it goes way up, and you can clear it. And so this is actually one of my favorite parts about working on the docs is that, you know, I have all these little examples that are, you're literally able to use the library without doing anything code related, right? Just going through the doc site hitting buttons, decreasing things, increasing things. We've got set item quantity, and you can use a picker down here. Removing an item totally. Now the cart's empty. And then we have the redirect to checkout and checkout single item, which this is actually broken right now. The backend that I had set up, I set up the products on Stripe. And so I messed with the data on the backend, and it's no longer there. So it doesn't know how to hit checkout. And so with these docs, you can also see the code examples of how you would use these. And so for the most part, you can copy and paste these. You might have to massage these components a little bit. And we have also a Discord community. If anyone wants to give this library a try or has any questions about the library itself, or even Stripe, there's a bunch of people in there that like to jump in and share feedback and answer questions if I'm not there. So it's pretty helpful. I'm gonna do like a little bit of a dive on the code itself. First of all, what got me started, I've never made a library before. I didn't even know that I was gonna be a maintainer. Thank you, I appreciate that. I had no idea I was gonna be doing all this stuff like a year or two ago. And so what got me kicked off was an egghead video. It was from JS Joe, and it was a video on how to make my own, how to make your own hooks library. And let me know if I got to zoom in. I probably should, to be honest. Hold on, let me do that real quick. And so honestly, that video is like an hour long. I'm ashamed to say it, but I only watched the first 6 minutes. So here I have a mono repo. This is where the documentation lives, in this documentation folder, the Gatsby project. Actually, this is an experimental folder. Ignore that. And then this is the library itself. And so if you look at the package.json, oh, Brian just submitted a PR live. That's amazing. I'm gonna go check that out after this. But let's see. So there's something called, there's like Create React app, right? But we're using something called Create Hooks Library or something. I cannot remember the name. But there's definitely a tool that's like Create React app, and it handles a lot of the setup for you. It comes with like rollup and a whole bunch of things that make sure that your library is in the best shape, your hooks library is in the best shape. So I watched the first 6 minutes of that, and the first 6 minutes was more or less like download Create React hooks. Oh, hey CJ, what's up? It was download Create React hooks and then run the command to start it up and just go from there. And so at first I had like, this code came from an existing Gatsby project, and it was like a giant mess. It was like a big reducer with a whole bunch of switch cases. I got a lot of help from, shout outs to Chris Brownie 55 on GitHub. That's the biggest contributor to uShopping Cart, and they helped me, make things a lot more solid, a lot more, I hate using this word, but robust. Like it seriously is a lot better. So, I mean, ultimately this thing is, we're using context, right? And, within the context, we have reducers that pass the state logic needed for the library. And so I'm not going to go too crazy deep into the code, but I want to show you, I want to start with the most important part of the whole entire library. All of this is like context and passing reducers down and whatnot. And then here are the actions to call them, but these things aren't as important. What's the most important part is if you look inside reducers, we have this entry class. And this entry class is like everything. Like it's like if the library had, this is the integrity of the library. If the library had morals, like this is where the morals are, the moral fiber or whatever. This is like the meat and potatoes, whatever metaphor or whatever you want to say, like this right here is it. And so what entry does is basically process that original object that I showed you with all the data, in add item, it processes this information to come out this way, where it's formatted in a particular way that Stripe's API likes, so that you can successfully hit checkout. And so entry, you pass product data to entry, the entry formats whatever. Here's some logic here. This is actually some recent changes. There's a beta version that's more upgraded, and I just recently added this stuff. Yeah, it's the protein of your food. And so it formats the data and makes it whatever it needs to be. And then all of the other actions from there are just variants of entry, right? So nope, this isn't using Redux at all. I actually love Redux, and I feel ashamed to say that out loud. A lot of people like cringe when they hear that. But I've had to be honest, I haven't had a good reason to use Redux for like a year. So yeah, I mean, Redux might have been a good option for this, but as it grows, right? But so far, this is working really well with context. We have, so we have entry, we have like creating an entry, which is adding the cart item, where it just, you pass the product data to entry, and you're formatting it, you're massaging it the way it needs to be. So you notice that we use the ID for the main key to access these objects. It makes it easier to like handle removing and adding stuff, and updating those items as well. We can update, which again, like you see entry in every single one of these actions. So for updating, for removing, actually not there because you're not returning an entry, or you're not using that structure or anything. And you get the idea. We're not gonna go, I've never been excited to see a whole bunch of code, and I'm not gonna do that to y'all. You probably are more interested in seeing some actual examples, right? And so recently I worked on a workshop for Netlify. So, and I made a Gatsby version of this and a Next version of this. And so you can see here, this is all theme UI. This actually, I'm really excited about making dark mode. There should be a link somewhere to see the source for this. But you know, I'm using philmurray.com for the images. You can see here I'm adding logic to the cart. It's all stacking up here. When I click on the shopping cart, it pops up this modal. Oh, I gotta show y'all one thing that's really cool for accessibility. We've got a skip link right here. So let's say your header, your nav is getting like dummy thick, and you've got like 100 links up there, and you know, you don't want people who are using the keyboard to navigate to go through all those items. So once they hit tab, they have an option to skip all of the header stuff and go straight to the main content. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of that. And you have all the functionality you need here. There's like removing the item. You see the selector that we saw in the docs. It all works the same exact way. And this is, you know, there's a value for, let's go back to the docs. So there's like a little API. There's a little API here, and these are the things that you'll get back. So there's like the cart count, which is what we're using up here next to the shopping cart icon. Then there's like the total price. Oh, mind you, this is all referring to, I think this is all updating based on what's literally in the cart right now. So let me update this real quick and go back to API. And so you can see that this stuff updates as well. 10, it has 4,000, but that's really $40. And then you go to, yeah, I mean, the docs site, it doesn't get any more simpler than this. And now here's the moment of truth where we're gonna hit checkout. And boom. So now you can see that we hit checkout. You got a nice picture of Bill Murray, whatever. And then you can mash 42424242 forever. Wait, I think I messed that up. How did I mess that up? And you can mash all kinds of other stuff. It's like showing all my personal info here, which is great. If anyone wants to hit me up, just do so. And then pay. And so, no, thank you. And I have like, you have a redirect. You could redirect people to different pages based on success or cancellation. It's actually required to use Stripe's checkout. I also have a next version of this. So this is the Gatsby version. I'm actually going to drop this right in the YouTube chat just because I'm hanging out with y'all. There's a next version of this. It literally looks the same. Actually, the only difference is it says built with Next at the bottom. But obviously the code is significantly different, right? So I don't even have the, I don't have that on my VS Code right now, but if we look at what I've got on here, you can see that there's a huge difference between the way you do this kind of thing with Gatsby versus Next. Like with Gatsby, I'm doing all kinds of wild stuff. You see, oh, this is, hold on, let me go. I got to change that to main. But you see, if you go to like Gatsby node, I'm doing tons of crazy GraphQL stuff. I'm sourcing nodes from a JSON object, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff with prices and making sure the data is formatted the way it should be. And then the next version of that basically has no GraphQL. It's all JavaScript. We have that, and I'm now learning Next. If anyone actually has feedback on the way I do this. Oh, I forgot to mention that. So the preferred way to use shopping cart is with serverless functions. You can do that with either Vercel or Netlify. We have this helper function here, right? So let's say you launch an e-commerce store and you're using like the serverless thing, and somebody decides to update your HTML. They use inspect element. They're like a major hacker, super evil villain, and they decide to make your bananas 1 penny and go straight to checkout. You need a way to protect yourself against that if you don't actually have a server set up. We have this validate cart items function, and what it does is it checks the original source of your product data with what's in the cart, and then it gives you back the correct values to protect you from those malicious, super evil villain people who want bananas for a penny. And then you have your standard like session ID creation stuff that you do with Stripe's checkout. So that's one similarity between both Next with Next and Gatsby. They both need that kind of setup. And I wanted to show the next way of handling creating a bunch of URLs for your pages, right? So here you're going to be using like get static paths. And honestly, what we're doing here is mapping that same product JSON data. And we're making sure the name is formatted to look like a sort of slug. And we have a slug, for the next example, we have a slug value that has what the URL is supposed to be. And so here I'm like saying, does the slug bananas match with, you know, this formatted version of the name? And if it does, pass that data down to the props of product. And this is for the individual page. And then I basically just have like, you know, all the elements in place for rendering like what that product page would look like. Oh, did I even show you all the individual? When I click on this, it takes you to this product page here. I know it's not the prettiest. I think, you know, with this workshop, that I'm actually going to be giving again in like a week or so, like literally a week. You know, focused more on the functionality and doing these types of things with the Jamstack, while also keeping accessibility in mind. So from there, yeah, I really like how Next has their little array thing for the name that communicates a lot. That's how you know there's going to be a bunch of like sort of named products. Trying to think of any other major difference between the Gatsby version and the Next version as far as like the coding goes and stuff. But I can't really think of anything. Does anyone have any questions? I just kind of been talking y'all's ears off.
Yeah. So a question, actually, we just had a question come in the chat, but I have a question, just sort of the management of this project and sort of engagement. You mentioned the Discord.
Yes.
But how has that experience been? Because you didn't start this project to do open source, but you started taking contributions. So how's that experience been for taking in contributions and coordinating issues and roadmap and where the future of the project going?
Yeah, actually, let me show y'all. I have a whole bunch of issues that I opened. And so, yeah, I started the library and then it sort of turned into like people being like, hey, I want to use this. And I had my own specific cases that I wanted to handle with this library, but everyone has different stuff they want to do, you know? And so that's sort of what happened. That's sort of how I decided what to work on. So somebody, I can't even think of an example right now, but somebody would come in and say like, hey, how does this handle, you know, how do you support, someone had something recently, but like, how do you support a backend or something, right? And that's actually not something we want to do within the library, but we sort of educate that person on what they can use, that you can use use effect, you know, to handle updating the cart with a function called load cart that we have. Actually, that's in the next release, but you know what I'm saying? Like people come and they have their own issues that they have with the library and they have their own wants. Somebody recently talked about trying to handle abandoned carts. And so I'm like, hey, that's a great idea. Maybe when we create a product, it should add a timestamp to each product that's created. And most of the time, backends handle that. They already have like the created at and all that other stuff. But it would be cool to have that kind of support for the front end. So you could notify someone of an abandoned cart, even though they didn't even log in. So that's how I sort of prioritized a lot. It's just sort of like what's coming my way. And then I would also go to like other e-commerce places. Like I would actually go to Amazon and other like stores, clothing stores or something. And I would click around.
I did the same thing with Kanye's Yeezy site.
Oh, nice.
I like the way his layout. So I ended up copying, I actually took a Stripe sample. So the question in the chat came up with, where do I find similar projects? And is there an example of easy to use web projects in a GitHub repo? And I would say this event, Floss and Code, has a project that's linked in the README. So you can check out that next example. Nick, you have some examples in Use Shopping Cart as well that people can check out.
I would actually, yeah. And then if you want to kind of just get your hands dirty, like I'm actually hoping that I would get other examples from other users. There's so many different ways to build an e-commerce experience, right? Like if you want to use some kind of CMS for a data source, if there's a specific, if you want to do it with Tailwind, I don't have any Tailwind example or anything.
I just dropped a link of a Tailwind example in the chat. So if you check out Dora's project. But yeah, Nick, thanks so much for the conversation in the chat and walking through the project. I hope folks that as you walk through there, people have now engaged and have an idea of how the project works. So if they will have issues or features or just want to get started, I personally started my project using Use Shopping Cart, which I'll talk about in a moment. We're going to take a quick break and transition for prepping our next speaker. But where can folks find you, Nick?
Find me on Twitter. I tweet a lot, not just about dev stuff. I'm tweeting about gaming and I don't know, however my fiance is harassing me and just annoying things that annoy me. But I do tweet about tech every now and then. I try to keep it funny and casual, you know. But anyone could reach out to me there or join the Discord if you want to talk about, you know, using this library, building e-commerce experiences and stuff like that. It's always a good time in there.
Yep. Yeah. So folks, don't sleep on that. Nick is available to answer questions in the Discord. He'll be around in his repos. So yeah, just say hello and yeah, ask away. So thanks again, Nick, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks. You too.
And everybody else, stick around. We're going to come back. I'm going to talk more about the hackathon that we're having this week, as well as talk about, actually, we're going to have Lee from Vercel talk about Next.js. So thanks. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're moving right along. We got a couple more workshops. We're going to have some technical conversations from Vercel and Stripe coming up. But before I jump in, I just want to take a quick, I don't know if it's a commercial break because this is the event, and talk about the event, Floss and Code. And if you weren't here in the beginning, I know people have been in and out. Floss and Code is an event that I've been kind of working on my entire career at GitHub. We've got opportunity to actually ship this last year in Atlanta, where we focused on getting CS students in Atlanta at Atlanta colleges in the South to contribute to open source, and that was a real focus there. And we were already ready to ship this actually in Oakland this year, And then we had to stop that because no in-person events as well. So we're now remote. We're doing this event and we're focused and we're partnering with Stripe and Vercel, which you're going to hear about in a moment. But I just want to also point out that GitHub Universe is also happening next week. So folks, if you have not heard of GitHub Universe, definitely check that out. And let me roll into my project. And we just heard from Nick. Nick just told us about shopping cart. My introduction into getting Stripe and e-commerce solutions, I had an idea for a sticker store, and I got that shipped in about a week, mainly because I was usually just doing it during lunchtime. But I like open source. I like to think of myself as an open source advocate, and I think about this this quote from Gucci Mane, who's based out in Atlanta. He's the godfather of trap music. And there's a quote, it's, if you don't got sauce, then you lost. And that's always how I felt when it came to getting ingrained in open source and trying to learn how things work. Like, I didn't know that you can just go into a GitHub issue and ask a question, or you can go to the discussion, or you have a Discord. Like Next.js and shopping cart and all the other projects have a really vibrant Discord and Slack communities that you can just jump into. So I had an idea quite a few years ago to build a project. It was a CRM to manage my open source contributions. And I called it Open Sauce based on the Gucci Mane quote. So I've been working on this project on the side for a couple years. It's really just I've been mainly the only user. We do have a couple hundred users now. That it actually works. But what I'm getting at is, and I'm mentioning all this, is because I wanted to actually create stickers. And my idea was like, hey, I want to just basically get stickers printed and shipped them to people's houses. And I wanted to solve that problem using technology. So Stripe was an obvious choice. So I learned about Stripe. I learned about places like Next.js. So what we're looking at here is a Next.js site, swag.opensauce.pizza. And what's wonderful about this is I did hardly any of the coding. I actually took a template from Stripe examples. So github.com/Stripe examples, took an existing Next.js template that actually had some other TypeScript and stuff like that already embedded. And I was able to get off the ground running really quickly. And that's the focus for this event. Like, we're giving you a template to get started really quickly. So not only do we have the Next.js subscription example, we have some other examples that you can find pretty easily. Just definitely ask questions in the discussions inside the repos, and people will point you to things. So if you haven't ever used Next.js, or if you haven't ever used React, like, this is the place to ask those questions. So I encourage you to check that out. And this is the example of the project that, so I leveraged, for swag.pizza, opensauce.pizza, I leveraged a template. This is a beautiful template that was put together by some Vercel and Stripe employees, as well as some Supabase employees as well. And it's built, it gives you all the bells and whistles. We talked to Lauren about how she leveraged PayPal and email to start her business. You don't have to use PayPal and email. All that stuff is already integrated into this project and this platform. And what I'm really excited about this is that there's a lot of tools that we're going to be learning more about in this next session. So real quick, I'm going to point to the repo once again, github.com/floss and code/Stripe Hackathon. This will give you a link. If you scroll just a little bit below the fold, you'll get the link to the template, and you'll get a link to all this information on how you can get started with this. But speaking of getting started, I also wanted to mention the challenge portion of this, because we haven't really talked about the hackathon. There has been some questions. Folks, if you are interested in how this process is happening, we're just essentially asking you to take the template, improve the template in one of 3 different ways: improve the copy, apply it to a real business, apply it to your business. You can improve the design. So this entire example project is built on Tailwind. Tailwind is a wonderful CSS framework that gets you up and running really quickly. I only just started using Tailwind and Next.js this year. So I didn't have a lot of experience using Next.js or Tailwind. I did have a lot of experience using React for the past couple of years, but there wasn't a lot that I had to sort of figure out. And I was able to leverage communities to answer questions. And even Nick, who was just on the chat earlier, he actually answered a lot of my questions about how it works with Netlify and Vercel, and getting functions working, and how the magic, like, all that happens. I was able to source through his content and his conference talks. And then we're also encouraging you, if you have a feature idea, because not everybody's a designer and everybody's a front-end engineer, but if you have a feature idea, implement that feature and improve the template, create your own template based on this template and the other templates. So we encourage you to just check it out. It's all in the README and there for you. And I do want to mention GitHub discussion as well. to ask questions. So that's the event that we're putting on. We're putting this event for you, trying to give you the skills, the tools to get started, to get businesses online. So with that being said, I want to introduce Lee Robinson. Lee is actually somebody who I had the pleasure of I met earlier this year, but I've met him earlier than that on YouTube, because he's who taught me how to use Next.js, using mastering Next.js too, .com actually. And so Lee, welcome. And looking forward to what you have to share with everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to share a little bit about Next.js and to give a good intro to everyone who will be working with the starter that you just mentioned.
Excellent. Yeah. So feel free to take it away. Oh, I did want to mention Lee is a Vercel employee. Not only does he know a lot about Next.js, he works at the company who's been maintaining it since the beginning as well. So I believe your title is Solution Architect, correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Excellent. Yeah. So go ahead and share your slides and we'll be good to go.
Awesome. All right. So I'll just jump right into it. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Next.js, give you a little bit of the background story, talk about how it's grown, and then I thought the most beneficial thing that I could do would be to talk about one of the things I see people get stumbled up the most on with Next.js, which is understanding how it fits into the React ecosystem, more specifically for how to fetch data. And I'll dive into all the different ways that you can fetch data, which you're going to take advantage of when you're working with the example that's provided. So if you haven't heard of Next.js, that's totally okay. It's a React framework, and what it tries to do is provide an opinionated, batteries included set of defaults for not only building React applications, but just high performance web applications. So in the past, if you were working with client-side frameworks like React or Vue or Angular, some of those frameworks, the React ecosystem specifically lets you kind of pick and choose which things you want to use, which packages you want to use. And Next takes a little bit different approach where we give a opinionated, sane set of defaults and allow you to extend or customize that as you see fit. So thinking about things like routing, we include file system-based routes out of the box. So all it takes is just create a new file and you have a new route in your application. You don't have to do any boilerplate configuration, including things like image optimization to serve images in the correct size based on the device that your users are coming from, and to optimize those images so that you have performant pages, taking advantage of things like React Fast Refresh, which greatly improves the developer experience of working with your application locally so that you can see your changes updated instantly. Just dropping in images or text files or anything inside of a public folder will automatically make them static assets that you can reference, like /favicon.ico. Built-in support for CSS, Sass, API routes. So if you think about a lot of tutorials that use just vanilla React, they also need some kind of backend functionality, and probably the most popular is Express, which is with Node.js. So API routes kind of allow you to merge the front end and back end worlds and build out just a new file that allows you to create a serverless function to do some functionality on the server side with Node.js, and then you can easily call that from your front end application. Going further, there's a long list, but going further, like internationalized routing when you want to expand to more countries, TypeScript support, and then a really big one too that is important as you take your application to production is code splitting and bundling. So if I'm visiting the index page of my application, I only want to serve the JavaScript for that page so that it's not only performant, but resilient if there was somehow a bug introduced on another page. So if we're only serving up the JavaScript bundle for that page, our page loads faster and we just have an overall better experience for our users. And that's all batteries included in the Next.js framework where you don't have to do anything. And because of this, we're seeing Next.js grow very quickly. In the past 2 years, it's grown to be the most popular React framework. And I think one of the most exciting things for me is seeing the adoption for the medium to large size businesses and all the way up into the enterprise. So there's a ton of awesome logos on there. And we're seeing anywhere from the Alexa 100 to 1,000, all the way into the 10,000, and then even your own personal site or your blog site. All those customers, all those users are really enjoying using Next.js. Now, as mentioned before, I work at Vercel, which is the easiest way to deploy your Next.js applications as well as other frameworks. And our mantra is develop, preview, ship. So you start with a Next.js application and you start with the building blocks of React, where it's kind of like Legos and you're putting together your application component by component, building up your e-commerce site, for example. You take that with a great developer experience, and then you use GitHub and you push to a GitHub branch, you open a pull request, and you use the Vercel GitHub integration to get a live URL of your code. So for example, on the subscription starter that we'll be looking at later and that Thor will be talking about, you'll see that if I open up a new pull request, I automatically get this live URL of my deployed changes that I can share with other developers, leadership, designers, etc., and collaborate and get feedback. And then when I'm ready, I can merge that PR and ship it to production and send it off to Vercel's Edge network, which takes care of a lot of the hard things for you that you don't want to worry about: SSL encryption, compression, cache invalidation, et cetera, and just makes it really easy for you to develop, preview, and then ship high quality, high performance sites. So that's kind of the overview. And what I want to dive into is to start looking at some tangible code and tangible examples of Next.js and start talking about some of the different ways that we can fetch data. As I mentioned with file system-based routing, creating a new Next.js application is as easy as using create next app, or just doing yarn or npm install React DOM, and next, and then all you need is one file. So if I make a new file at pages/about.js and I export a React component from that file, this is now served up at localhost 3000/about. So I didn't have to configure any router. It's just based on what's in my file system. And this makes it really easy to start small, just one route, and scale that up to however many routes that you want in your application. Now, you've probably heard of these terms before: client-side rendering, server-side rendering, and static site generation, but you might be confused, one, how they work, two, how they compare or when I would use one, or three, just looking for tangible examples of how they fit into this ecosystem of building web applications. So what I want to do is talk about each one individually to give you a better idea of how they fit together. And then also we'll talk about incremental static regeneration, which is a little special sauce on top. So the first concept to understand is pre-rendering. And this is, if you think about just a plain React app, on initial load, the app isn't rendered. So if you've ever tried to visit a React application with a really, really slow connection that maybe has a large bundle, you're going to see this period of white on your screen where you're waiting for that JavaScript to load. And after it loads, there's this hydration process where the React components are initialized and the app becomes interactive. And that's with no pre-rendering, right? This is just a plain React app. With Next.js, the focus is on pre-rendering. And what this means is that on that initial load, the HTML that you're getting from the server is going to be displayed initially. This leads to a lower time to first byte, which is a web vital. And overall, it provides a better experience for your users, because then after the JavaScript loads, the hydration period happens, then your app becomes interactive, but it feels faster and it's perceived faster. Plus, when doing pre-rendering, which you might have heard in relation to server-side rendering or static site generation, when you're serving that initial markup from the server, it's better for SEO because it's able to be immediately indexed by Google instead of waiting for the Google bot or the crawler to index that at a point later in time. So let's talk about static generation. With static generation, the key word to focus on here, and I'll talk about build time and then request time. So with static generation, at build time, I'm going to build my application using the next build command, and it spits out some HTML, which then when I visit that page in my browser, on every refresh, I'm still hitting the same file. I'm hitting a file that can be cached on, for example, Vercel's global edge network, and it's static, which means that it's faster, it's more reliable, it's more resilient, which is great, right? But really there's two different types of static generation, excuse me, without data and with data. And we're going to talk about the first here. So if you don't have any data and you run next build, it's just going to automatically make your HTML, and it doesn't have to fetch any external data. So if we go back to this about example that we started with, this is actually doing static generation, static pre-rendering. This component will render down to HTML. It fetches no data, and it will be served as a static route. Now, the more common use case is that you have some data. So you run next build, you call some API, or you interact with your database, and you fetch some data. And then once that request, that promise resolves, then you can generate your HTML. So let's look at an example of this. This is just extending that code snippet that we had before. And you'll see that we have get static props. Get static props is a function that you can export inside of your page file, so pages/index. And inside of this component, inside of this function, you can fetch, for example, some products for your e-commerce site, return that data as JSON, and then you can return props, for example, products, and forward those to that React component. So now you see this home component. In the parentheses, we have access to the props or properties in React for these products, and we can then iterate over those products and say, here's all the titles for each product. Now, the really interesting thing is we talked about static generation at build time, but with incremental static regeneration, you can also get static generation at request time. So if we go back to our get static props and we add this value of revalidate of 60, we're telling our application that after 60 seconds, we're going to deem our content as stale. And in the background, on the next request, we will go and statically generate a new version of that content. Assuming that that request and that generation is successful, we will purge the cache and update it so that on the next visit, they see the new fresh content. And this is based on the stale while revalidate cache control header. So I have a quick example here, just a little GIF. And it's using GitHub discussions or a GitHub issue per se, and you're leaving reactions on the issue. And you notice that when you leave these reactions, you go back to the demo and you refresh. The first time you see the stale content, but on the second refresh, you're seeing that new content being statically generated, and then you can refresh away and you're still hitting the static page, the static HTML that's being hosted at Vercel's edge network. So this is really, really cool, and it unlocks a lot of interesting use cases that previously would be difficult with static generation, and also would require you to rebuild your entire application when maybe you only wanted to, change or rebuild one small piece. The next thing that I want to talk about is server-side rendering. So with server-side rendering, the HTML that you're getting back from the server is generated on each request. Now, if you want to think about an example of this, think about something like the Facebook newsfeed. You have highly dynamic content that is specific to a user. It might be personalized. It might have an A/B test or some kind of experiment. It might have ads, all these type of things that need to be generated at each request. So it uses server-side rendering to deliver that content and that HTML at every request. Now, usually you're doing server-side rendering with some data. So in this server-side render method we're going to talk about here in a second, it goes and fetches some external data from an API or a database, and then that HTML is generated and sent to your users. So the code example is fairly similar to before, but we're using a function called get server-side props. And inside of here, we have basically the same thing, fetching our products, returning some JSON, and forwarding those to our component. The final one that I want to talk about is static generation without data, but we're also fetching data on the client side. So if you're like, well, I'm really confused, don't worry, it'll make sense. So we first talked about static generation without data. So you're sending some, like the about example, right? You're sending just some static markup as HTML on the server. If we think about loading states, we can look at this Vercel dashboard on the right, and this is actually using the static generation without data plus client side pattern here. So initially, the server is returning this loading skeleton, and it's pre-rendering that with no data. So we run next build, and this is what gets rendered out for our application. Then on the client side, when the JavaScript loads, so at the request time, then we can fetch some external data and then populate the rest of the page. So for this dashboard, it might be my user and my projects and my deployments. And to do that, at Vercel, we created a really handy library that helps with this. It is a React hook for data fetching called SWR. So with SWR, it makes it really easy to initially serve that loading state with pre-rendering. So whether that's just loading ... or some more complex skeleton, serve that, and then use this SWR hook to talk to an API route, whether that's your own API in Next.js or an external API, the GitHub API, whatever you want. It could be JSON, it could be GraphQL, it could be anything. Talk to that API, fetch some data, and if that was successful, then you can return that and render that data to your users. Now, the really cool part about Next.js is that it's a hybrid framework. And this ties into the origin story of Next.js and kind of how it's been built. So when Next.js originally started, the focus was on server-side rendering. And it was on server-side rendering and pre-rendering more specifically for the SEO benefits, and also so that we could do code splitting on a per page or per route basis. But over time, as the ecosystem improved, as Next.js improved, that's when we started to introduce concepts like static site generation with get static props and get static paths, and incremental static regeneration. And it evolved over time. But the best part about it is that Next.js allows you to choose out of all the different strategies that I just presented on a per page basis what you want to do. So for example, my index route, that's my marketing page for my website, I want that to be statically generated, probably without data, like it's probably just some static markup with some images, and we can do that with Next. But then maybe for my newsfeed page, I want that to be server-side rendered as part of my product. Again, we can do that with Next, and then maybe our profile pages use incremental static regeneration where, let's say we have a minute for the revalidation period, and it's serving up static files as long as they're fresh within a minute. After that, it revalidates them. So the best part about Next.js is that you can do all of these within the bounds of the same framework. Now, this is really important when you think about the long-term play for your application or for your company. You don't want to switch frameworks every couple years. And with React being a mature framework in the space, and also still continuing to evolve and ship major features while still remaining backwards compatible, which is amazing, Next.js has allowed us to take advantage of all the benefits of React and provide a upgrade path along the way by reducing breaking changes. And we'll continue to do that into the future. So this is probably my favorite part of Next.js. And a few months ago, we had Next.js conference, which was our first ever global user conference, which was amazing. And those videos are up on YouTube if you want to check them out. But one of the things that we announced that I'm super excited about is Next.js Commerce. And this is an all-in-one starter kit that allows you to build and deploy high-performance e-commerce applications. Now, everything that I just talked about earlier, all those different data fetching strategies, the per page routing, the code splitting bundling, image optimization, internationalization, TypeScript, Tailwind, all that stuff, it's all packaged and put into this template that makes it really easy for you to clone it, deploy it, and get running in just a few clicks. So think of this as the like end state of the template that you're working on in this workshop. This is kind of like the end state that you would ship to production. So my intention with talking about this is it shows you how easy it can be to build really high quality, really performant e-commerce applications. And what I hope is that you can not only take the starter that Thor will talk more about, that uses Next and Tailwind and Stripe and Supabase and GitHub and all these amazing things, take that as your building blocks, and you can reference this demo, and all the code is open source, and you can learn from both. They both use similar sets of tools, and use these to build your products, build your applications, whether for yourself or for your company, and really empower you to create amazing e-commerce experiences, because that is really the future of the web. And as we've seen this year, e-commerce has played an incredible part in that. So I want to jump out of my slides really quick, and I'm just going to go over to this store, and I want to just show you what it looks like. This entire UI is built with Tailwind CSS. And if you scroll down, we've even got, some different product images about the products, all coming from a CMS. And if I click on a product, you can have different colors. You can add things to your cart. If you see I have things in my cart already up here, I can go to checkout. I could go over and look at different orders that I've placed. I could look at my profile. I have different light themes, dark themes, etc. And all of this is open source. It's on GitHub, Vercel/commerce. So hopefully you can take this and use it as inspiration or clone it for building your e-commerce applications. That's it. Thank you so much for letting me speak today, and I'll see you in GitHub discussions. Happy to answer any questions about Next.js or Vercel or just anything about the web.
Yep. And thanks, Lee, so much. There's a lot of excitement and chatter about that commerce template. And I just want to reiterate too as well, in the rules for the hackathon, we're not limiting you to only leverage the one template. The goal for the hackathon is to give you all the tools you need to get started really quickly. So assuming that not everybody knew React, not everybody knew Vercel or Next.js, we wanted to give you at least one template that could make your life easier. So Stripe has a lot of templates. We have this commerce template as well that you're more than welcome to leverage. What we're asking is that you actually leverage it. So we don't want to see you clone the template and then submit that as a submission. We'd love you to improve the template, add features, add content, add copy. So I appreciate you and the Next.js team taking the time to put this together, put together all these awesome projects. And the best part about this is it's open source too as well. So not only can you go to this template, you can go to the Next.js org, ask questions about that and some of those cool features that you mentioned. In passing, Nick was sort of fawning over the fact of the IDs and the URLs and how, like, I've been around the web for a while, so like I know how hard that is to get that working. But Next gives you that for free to be able to have multiple IDs and products in within. Sorry, I'm trying to talk about the URL. I don't know why I'm on the parameters in the URL, how to explain that, but y'all check out the Next.js documentation. And then also, Lee, where can people find you on the internet as well?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on Twitter at LeeRob with 3 E's, because somebody else already took the normal LeeRob. Yeah, you can feel free to connect with me on there. Shoot me a DM if you have any questions. Yeah, and then shout out to your YouTube course too as well. The course, you have a website, it's Mastering Next.js. But it's also on YouTube. So folks, you're on YouTube right now. So definitely check that out as well. Absolutely.
Awesome. Excellent. So enjoy the rest of your day. And folks, we have one more guest speaker workshop. It's going to be from Thor from Stripe. He has put together this presentation showing us how to walk through the template and how it's built, how to integrate with Supabase, how to integrate with Next.js. It's going to give you all the tools and thoughts and how to all the pieces connect. So this will be super informal. Again, this will be on YouTube, so you can watch this after the fact and fast forward and rewind as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Thor.
Thanks.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining this workshop on building recurring revenue streams with GitHub, Next.js, Stripe and Supabase. Today, it's easier than ever to start an online business. Next.js helps us build modern web experiences. Stripe allows us to process payments online within a matter of minutes. And there are many APIs and developer tools for managing user data, authentication and data in general. In the indie hacker community, many solo entrepreneurs have embarked on the journey of bootstrapping a software-as-a-service online business, which can be very rewarding. And they are sharing their journeys on the Indie Hackers platform. My friend Sumit, for example, is building Trezor One, a portfolio tracking tool that is now generating monthly recurring revenue for him. Now, while all this great tooling is available, it is still quite difficult to make everything work together. We've got to securely sign up and authenticate our users, and we need to store some information about them, which we can then show to them in their profile. We have to collect their payment details, and especially with subscriptions, we have to handle webhooks to get notified when the subscription status for our user changes, so that we can automatically provision or deprovision their access to our service. Now, that's a lot of work for something that's not core functionality to what we're looking to build. That's why we've teamed up with engineers from GitHub, Vercel, Stripe and Supabase to build an open source subscription payment starter that has all of the plumbing already set up. It is available under the MIT license here on GitHub. Over the next 30 minutes or so, I will walk you through setting up this starter and explain how it works. Let's first have a look at the features. The starter comes with secure user management and authentication using Supabase. Also powerful data access and management tooling on top of Postgres, also enabled by Supabase. It has an integration with Stripe Checkout and the Stripe Customer Portal for managing subscriptions, and all of the plumbing is already set up, meaning that there's automatic syncing of pricing plans and information and subscription statuses via Stripe webhooks to our Supabase database. Now, let's have a look at Supabase. If you haven't heard of it before, it's an exciting new startup that is using open source tooling and is building open source projects on top of Postgres. Postgres is an open source database with decades of development behind it, and it scales really well. On top of Postgres, there is a couple of services, all open source as well. GoTrue is used for authentication. Postgres is used to expose a CRUD REST API on top of your Postgres database. Real-time is a real-time server that listens to changes on the database and uses WebSockets to then automatically sync that data in real time to the client, the browser, for example. And PG API is a library to manage the Postgres database. Additionally, Supabase provides a set of client libraries that make user management and authentication as well as data access a really great experience for developers. And we're going to look at that in more detail. Now, let's have a look at setting up our project. There are three main components at play here. We have Supabase, which is our database and authentication API. We have our Next.js project hosted on Vercel. And then we have our Stripe account. Now, our Next.js project uses Supabase for authentication, so to do sign up and sign in, as well as sign up with OAuth via GitHub, for example. and it does the database API CRUD operations. Then our Next.js project on Vercel creates checkout sessions and customer portal sessions to manage the subscriptions for our users. And then Stripe notifies us about changes in the Stripe dashboard. For example, if we change our products or our pricing in the Stripe dashboard, or a subscription has failed because the card failed or it has successfully renewed, all of those updates are automatically sent by Stripe to an API route on our Next.js project. And then this API route automatically syncs that data, those changes, to our Supabase database. Great. Now, in order to get started, we will need a new Supabase project. So let's head over to supabase.io. I'm already logged in here. You might have to create a new account. And then you say create a new project. I'm going to call it GitHub FLOSS. Set a strong password. And I'm based here in Singapore, so I'm selecting Southeast Asia as the region. Now it will take a little while for Supabase to set up our database and the all the different components on top that I've mentioned, the authentication, the Postgres API. So while that is happening, you can have a look at the videos there with updates. Great. Now our project is set up, and we could go ahead and create a new table here via this user interface, and we can manage our data. But let's have a quick look around. So here's the table editor, which is kind of a graphic UI interface for managing your data. We have the authentication tab where we'll see all the users that we've signed up. We can write policies. We're going to talk about the row level security policies later. So that means that only specific users, basically only users, can see their own data and not someone else's data, which is very important. We have some templates, which are email templates for kind of user management actions. So if they, reset their password or they use the magic link functionality, you can update the email templates here. And then lastly, the settings. Here we will need to set our Vercel URL, and we configure the OAuth provider. So we're going to set up GitHub here in a minute. Then we do have a SQL editor here. We actually have the Stripe subscription starter template right in here. So we could use this just to run and deploy. But this is also available in our project in the schema.sql. Here we are, and we're going to look through that in a second. So we have our SQL editor, which is a way for us to interact with our database. So we can write SQL in here. Then we have our Postgres API, which actually automatically builds documentation of how to use it. Once we'll add tables, we can see them show up here, and we can find information of how we can interact with our database. And then here we'll be able to configure extensions for the Postgres database, for example, configurations and all of that. And then in the settings, what we'll need is the API settings. So here we get our Supabase project URL, which we'll need to set up our client. And then we have two API keys. We have a public anon key, so that is the key that we can use on the client side, and that will adhere to the security policies. so that we can use in our public code. And then the service role is actually an admin role that doesn't adhere to the security policy. So this is something that you should only use on the server side, and that's need to be kept secret. Okay, let's move on. So we've set up our account. Next, we will need to set up our database tables and authentication policies. So as I mentioned, these are here in the schema.sql file. First of all, for this project, we have the real-time syncing disabled. We're not using that here. And so we've got that turned off. We have a users table. So this is our public users table. We also have not public auth users table, which is used by the go-through authentication, but it is good practice to have additionally a public users table. And we use this to store information about our users, like first name, last name. If we get that from GitHub, for example, we get an avatar URL. And then also from Stripe, we get a billing address for them, as well as a payment method. And here, the billing address and the payment method, we simply store as JSON, which is great. Postgres has really great capabilities for storing JSON and even filtering and querying on kind of subfields of nested JSON data, which is really powerful. So that's great. And here is the row level security policies that I've mentioned that work together with the go-through authentication that Supabase has. So here we're creating a policy that says only the authenticated user can see their own data. So that is for selecting operations, so for reading data, and then as well for updating data. Only they can update only their own data via the client side. We then here have a trigger that automatically replicates the users from our authentication database table to our public users database table. So anytime we sign up a new user on our project, it automatically syncs their user ID to our public users table. And then because here we got inserting disabled, because we don't want folks to be able to just insert data. So that's what we do with a database trigger here. Anytime we sign up a new user, we then create a new user in our public users table, a new row. We then have a private table as well, which is our mapping table for the Stripe customer objects. So this really is just a mapping of our Supabase auth user ID to our Stripe customer ID. And that's what we'll need to make sure that the user is authenticated and then redirect them to the Stripe customer portal, where they can actually action their billing address and their billing details, their payment method, can update that. So it's very important that we know that the user is authenticated here. And so here we actually set no policies because it's a private table. So only our service role key is able to read and write to that table, not our public add-on key. Then we have a products table. So those are the products that we'll create in Stripe, and they are synced via the webhooks. So we'll have a look at that later. And we can also write metadata on the product. So we could write some metadata where, kind of a custom role or what have you. So anything like that we can put in here. And the product information is public, so public read-only access. So we set it just to true for select operations. Now, the prices table is specifically for our subscription pricing plan information. So that's also created in Stripe and then synced via the webhook to our Supabase database. And then lastly, we have a pretty large subscriptions table here. And that is the subscription status for our users. So it references our users here. So we're able to then write a query to check if the currently logged in user has an active subscription, and we can then provision access to them or hide pages based on that. Great. So let's actually go ahead. I'm just going to click on raw here, do a Command A to select all of our database schema here. And then I go back into my SQL editor and just here into a query tab, paste that all in. And then we just hit the run button to set everything up. Great, so that was successful, very quick. And now we can actually look at the API, and we can see here that we have our tables automatically documented. So there's automatically generated documentation, and we can actually look at this here. And so this is how you would read all rows of data. If you're familiar with SQL, then it's pretty close to SQL syntax, but you can do pretty powerful stuff there with foreign tables. It's almost like GraphQL, so you can get nested data from foreign tables, and we'll have a look at how all of that works in a little bit. Okay, now what is our next step? So we want to set up GitHub as an OAuth login for our page, so that folks can just simply sign up with their GitHub account. So we'll need to configure that a little bit. So we need to generate a client ID and a secret. So let's do that here. So let's call this maybe GitHub FLOSS subscriptions. We're gonna have, let's just set this as the homepage URL, and then we need an authorization callback URL, and so that needs to be our Supabase project here with the callback. So let's just put that in, and then we need to grab from the settings API and just grab our Supabase URL here. Put that in. Sorry, no, we only need the project part, this one here. Go the auth callback, and then let's register that application. Not begin with GitHub. Okay, let's just do FLOSS subs then. And here we are. So we have now a new application, and so now we have the client ID. So that's what we need to set up in our authentication settings. So here we now enable GitHub, and so we set up our GitHub client ID, and then we also set up, we generate a new client secret, and we copy. Does that copy button work? And we copy that in here. And let's save that. And so then we can sign in with GitHub, which is great. So we got that. Okay, we got all of that done. And then, yeah, we'll need our anon key and our service role once we deploy to Vercel. So now we can actually go ahead and we can just click the deploy button on Also here we sign in with GitHub. Great, and let me just call this actually GitHub FLOSS subs, and then continue. And so now here we have deploy integration with Stripe, so we can actually just automatically connect a Stripe account. So we can just say connect to Stripe, which then triggers the OAuth to Stripe. Now we can sign in with our Stripe account if we have one, or we can create a new one. Now in development mode here, we can just simply skip the account form. We can now automatically set up the webhooks by just clicking the button. And then we can head back to Vercel. Okay, so the Stripe setup was successful. Let's continue here. Let's just call this GitHub FLOSS subs. I'm just going to make this a private repository because I already have the repo there. And now you can expand the environment variables here, and you can see that the Stripe integration has added 3 environment variables. So that's our Stripe publishable key, our Stripe secret key, and then also our webhook secret to make sure we only handle legitimate Stripe webhooks and no one can just say, oh, I'll send you a webhook event, my subscription is active. So only Stripe is actually able to send us webhook events. So that's great. And then lastly, we need to set up our project, our details from Supabase. So let's grab our project URL, put that in here. Then we'll need our public anon key. We just close that here, and then our service role secret key here, and then we just hit deploy. While that is deploying, let's actually open up dashboard.stripe.com. So that has created a new test account for us. Where do we have it? Unnamed account. Here we are. And so what you can do is you might have to claim the account if you weren't already logged in. So then you can just say, click here on the user, and it would say save account. When we go to the developers and webhook section, we can see that here the Vercel deploy integration has automatically set up our webhook pointing to our project, and it has then already set up the signing secret as an environment variable on our project. So that is really nice. So now our project is deployed. Let's go ahead and visit it. And here we can see it. Now you can see we don't have any pricing plans. So we'll need to create those pricing plans in Stripe. So that is the section here, configure Stripe. We'll do that in a second. But what we can already do is maybe test our sign-in. So let me make that a bit bigger maybe. Let's go to account here. We're not signed in yet, but let's continue with GitHub. Make sure, oh, I think I might have, oh yes, that makes sense. So one thing I forgot, and it actually is in here, configure Supabase auth. So after deploying, we need to copy our deployment URL. So by default, it is set to localhost. and we'll need to update that. So just grab your Vercel project URL and go back to your authentication settings in Supabase and just set this as the site URL. Give that a save. Great. And now what we can do is, okay, let's try this again. And so now we're in the GitHub OAuth flow. That's our FLOSS subs. Let's authorize. And then we're being redirected back. And so now if we go to the account page, we're logged in. I got my GitHub username here and the email address that is associated with my GitHub account. Great. So now choose your plan. We don't have any plans set up, so let's do that now. So in our Stripe dashboard, we go to products, and then we say add a new product. Let's maybe create a hobby plan. Let's say all the basics for your new business. And then we can do some additional options. So for example, we can put some metadata in here. And we could say something like, yeah, role hobby if we wanted to, although we can also just use the name of the product, however you like, but let's just set some metadata so we can see it in our database. And then let's just do maybe like $5 US per month, and then let's do a discounted yearly plan, add another price here, and we're going to set that to yearly and maybe make that 50. So if we hit save product now, what happens, and we can see that in the webhooks section, we had a bunch of webhooks if things were synced. So we can go in our project to the table editor, and now we can open our products table. We can see that we have our product, so that was synced correctly. We can see our hobby role metadata here. Let's look at the prices. We actually have both prices as well synced. So that's great. That's all working as expected. And so now if we give a refresh to our page, we now see our hobby plan show up. Fantastic. Maybe let's add another one. Let's add another product. So let's call that maybe the freelancer plan, and let's also add some metadata. Again, we could add a role. I'm adding just the metadata as an example. We don't really need it for the functionality here, but freelancer, and then maybe let's make that 12 per month, or if we do yearly, then a little discount. Oh no, that would be pretty big discount. Again, save that. And so now, again, we can see here our products created, product was created, and we can see that we handled the webhook, it succeeded, received true. So that means now if we go back to our dashboard, look back, so we now have hobby and freelancer, and we got our 4 prices here. Great. So if we give that a refresh, now the thing is, we're using here incremental static regeneration. So we can actually have a look at this now. So maybe what we do is, so by deploying via Vercel, Vercel actually created a new repository for us on our account. So that's here at the GitHub FLOSS subs. So now let's actually clone this down to our local machine. So let's say git clone. Yeah, and so now we have our GitHub FLOSS subs here, and we have okay, it looks like Vercel makes this a master branch. Maybe we can quickly rename this. I always forget. What's pretty cool is when so GitHub nowadays, if you create a new, let's see, if you create a new repository, let's just create one, let's just call it rename, make it private. So, I mean, I could have Googled this as well, I guess, but what GitHub does, which is pretty cool, by default, it takes the current branch, it renames it to the main branch, and then it pushes the main branch. So let's do that here, although, yeah, so it might impact the integration because Vercel listens to kind of changes to specific branch. So I think we'll then just have to, oh, I think we can just rename it in the settings maybe. Can we, let's see. Branches here, right? Default. Okay, we would need another branch. So let's actually do, let's just do this. Let's rename. And then let's just push is it like this? No, sorry. I always origin. I mean, I have a shortcut set up for it. That's probably why I never remember it. So I'm just pushing up the main branch, and now let me see. Do we still have? Sorry, it's a bit of an excursion here, but I just prefer that it's called main. Let's have a look. Yes, main. So update that, and then we can, okay, right. We should tell Vercel that they should just, okay. So now we got the main branch all set up. Cool. Now the last thing that could go wrong. I mean, this is interesting though, because like my template definitely uses main branch, right? Yeah, main. Okay. Let's have a look. And then I think, okay, so I think we might have to change that. That's a bit annoying. Settings. Yeah. Self-focus, yeah, we got that. Ah, main. Yes, okay. Interesting. That was a bit of an excursion, but yeah, I'll check with my friends at Vercel why it didn't just use the main branch by default. Okay. Now we have it all set up. We got the main branch. Okay. Yes. Fabulous. So let's actually open this up in VS Code. Sorry, where was I? Yes, incremental static regeneration. So if we look at the pages here, so maybe let's just look at the project. We got some components, we got some icons, some UI components here. We're not going to look at those in detail. What we're going to look at in detail is kind of the pricing, the user context. But so specifically what we're using here, let's cancel that for now, is incremental incremental static regeneration. So at build time, we fetch our products from Supabase. So the way we can do this is we can, we say from products, we want to fetch all information about our products, and also we have a foreign key to our prices. So our prices reference back our products. We can see that here. Maybe if we go to prices, you can see, so our prices reference back our product ID. So what this means is we can then, using the foreign key, we can get, kind of like GraphQL sort of, we can get our nested prices. We say we only want the ones that are active. So the way you would say, you would set a subscription to inactive, sorry, a pricing plan is, let's set hobby here. So we can say archive product. So this now updates the active Boolean in our database. So here we can see this product is now not active. And now what happens if the next time our page is built, and it is incremental static regeneration, so it's only being built every 60 seconds. So that way we don't make an API request to our database every time the page loads, but it's actually statically built. But then we still want, changes that we make in Stripe to be reflected when I archive this here. And so that's why we set the revalidate prop in the get static props to then after 60 seconds rebuild. So that's when we refetch. But the great thing is, so if you have 1 million users visiting your website within a minute, only one API request is being made. So only the first one to visit the page, that's when the API request is being made. Then Vercel with Next.js generates a static page. Yeah, and when the static page is generated, it then serves just a static page to our users. Okay, so we're filtering on the product being active. We're filtering on the price being active. So we could also just archive, one of the prices. And then what's pretty cool is we can actually order by metadata. So let's have a look back at our page here. So I've archived the product. So we can now see we got a problem. We actually want the hobby to show up before the freelancer. So let's assign an index in the metadata. So we want hobby to be index 0. So what we can do is we can edit the product. in the additional options, we can add another metadata key. We can say index, and this one is index 0. And then we go to our freelancer product, so that is index 1. So here, advanced. One, let's save that. And so now, if it's been a minute since then, come on. Yay. So now you see we did another database query, and we now ordered by metadata index. As well, we ordered by the unit amount of the prices, which we can also do. Okay, but here we just got our monthly billing, and then we switch to yearly billing. It just cycles through like this. Awesome. So now let's have a look at the user context, which is a pretty crucial piece to this application. So the user context handles all the authentication and login, sign up, and it shares the state of the user object as well as the user details loaded from our database and our subscription details in a central kind of React context. So that means by we have this user context provider, and our app at the root is wrapped into this user context provider, which means throughout the component tree in our React application, we can then access the user context data. And so here we just have kind of a user loaded, which we use to check that kind of all of the data, so including the user details and the subscriptions, all of that is loaded. So we're just using use state here. We then have a use effect. The use effect really is here just running the first time our user context here is being mounted. So that means when our app is loaded, that runs immediately. And what this does is it basically checks, oh, do we have currently assigned in user, do we have a Supabase authentication session? If we have that session, then let's set our session details in the context, and let's set our user. And then also what we're doing is we're setting up a listener to changes to the authentication state. So anytime someone signs in, signs out, all of that, this listener fires here. And so we have a function where we have the event and the session. And what we're doing here is just if we get a signed in event, so for example, after they signed in with GitHub, we then just read out the user object, which has user metadata. So if we're using the GitHub OAuth sign up, then the user metadata has the full GitHub username as well as the full avatar URL, which we can use. And so we just do then update that information in our public users table. And then anytime this auth status changes here, we also update our session and our user. And lastly, in the use effect, we then return the unsubscribe function. So once this unmounts, although it's a global wrapper, so it wouldn't unmount as long as our application is open. But still, it's good practice. You know, should the component unmount, we want to unsubscribe to these updates. Great. So we have that. So that syncs our status for the user. We then also have just a function to get the user details. So that's really just a select star from users. And we know there's only a single user. So by adding the single keyword, we only get one data. So instead of getting an array back, we only get one object back. Same for subscriptions. We only allow one active trialing or active subscription. And here again, we get the prices, the pricing information, as well as the product information for the subscription. So our role metadata would also be available on this subscription object. And then what we're doing is this in another use effect. So anytime here we have a dependency. So anytime the user changes, this use effect is being run. And basically what we're doing here is if we have a user object, we then parallelize here our get user details and get subscription details in a promise all settled. And then we set our user details, our subscription details. And lastly, once all of that is loaded, we set the user loaded to true. Fantastic. And then lastly, this is our context provider. So here we're just exporting, that's the context that's available in our context provider. So the session, the user details, the user loaded, the subscription, and then we're passing on the sign in, the sign up, as well as the sign out function. And we're actually extending the sign out function to just set the user details and the subscription details to null. And then we call the Supabase auth sign out there. Great. And then what else? Yes, so we set up our user context. And lastly, we're kind of doing this use user, which just is sort of a wrapper over the user context. It just makes it a bit easier to then do the use user in our other components. So maybe we can look at that here in the account page. You can see we're importing the use user here. And then we can get our user loaded, just our variables, our user, our session, user details, all of that from the use user. And then we can show that in our account page. Great. What else? So let's actually now sign up. So I got my account, here my account information, but now I actually need to choose a subscription plan. Let's get that discount and do the yearly billing. Subscribe to the freelancer plan here. And now we're getting to the Stripe checkout page. So this is now on the Stripe domain. We can use Google Pay if we don't want to fill in the whole form. Just say pay. And then in the background, there is a bunch of webhooks that now fire to create the subscription, create all of that. And we're in, oh, it's using the Vercel URL. Why is it not using our main URL? Oh, right, I haven't set up the URL, have I? So let's have a look at success URL. So create checkout. Here it just gets the URL and we can see process.env.url is not set. So it's using the Vercel URL, which actually differs from our main deployment URL. If we go back here where we're logged in, and now I think if we give that a refresh, we see that our subscription has updated. But so we actually need to set the URL. Oh, here we have all the functions. Nice. So we can do that in our project settings, and then just the environment variables. And we'll just set, we can see kind of all the Stripe variables down here. And now we just set a plain text, and this is a URL. There we are. And then we'll just set it for all of them. Let's save that. Now, this only takes effect after we trigger a rebuild. So we can actually go to deployments, select this latest deployment here, and we could just say redeploy. And so what this does is now it triggers a redeploy with our new environment variables taking effect. Great. While that is building, let's have a look at the webhook handler. So here we have our API routes. We got the create checkout session, which we looked at. So what it does, it actually checks our user authentication token from the request headers. So when we make our request to the create checkout session, which we make here in pricing, so you can see handle checkout, we're sending the token, which is our session access token. So the currently authenticated session, we send that to our API route. And now in our API route here, we're then using the token to use the Supabase admin. So Supabase admin is a Supabase client that uses our service role. You remember the service role because we're here in a server-side context. So anything in our API routes here is running in a server-side context. And so we can use our secret keys here. And then we're just getting the user from the token. And once we have the user, we can then create or retrieve the Stripe customer. And really what this does is it's here in the use database. Yeah, and really what this does is just it checks. So it tries to get our Stripe customer for this specific user ID that we got from the token. And if we don't have a customer yet, so again, we only expect a single one here, then we get an error, and so we have no customer record found yet. And then what we do is we just create a new Stripe customer. We then insert that Stripe customer into our customers table, which is the private customers table that again can only be accessed via here the Supabase admin using the service role, and then we just console log new customer inserted. Great. So that's how the customer creation mechanism works. And now let's actually have a look at the webhook handler. So the webhook handler is, if we look back at our settings here, the webhooks. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. So here, API route and then /webhooks, that's our webhook handler that was set up in Stripe. And we're just doing So we're importing the absurd product record, absurd price record, and then manage subscription status functions from our used database. What's important for handling Stripe webhooks, we need the raw request data. So we set body parser false here. And then we actually just get the raw buffer from the request. We get some relevant events set up here. So we're currently handling the product created, product updated, price created, price updated, and then checkout session completed, and all the subscription created, updated, and deleted events. And then we have our webhook handler. We're only listening to post methods. We get our raw buffer. We verify our signature with the webhook secret from our webhook endpoint. And we construct our event, and then we have a switch to handle the different cases. Either we upsearch the product or the price record, or we manage our subscription status. And maybe we have a look at the manage subscription status here. What we do is we retrieve the latest subscription, we expand for the default payment method because we actually want to insert that payment method into our users table. And then we use our mapping table now the other way around. So we get the customer ID from Stripe. And what we now need to find is our user ID, so our Supabase auth user. And so what we do is we look up in our customers mapping table using the Stripe customer ID. We select the user ID, and here we deconstruct that into UUID, and then we're copying the billing details to the customer. So that's both the billing address and the payment method. And then lastly, we get kind of big subscription data. We cast the timestamp, which in Stripe is just timestamp in seconds, and we cast that into a data object, which we then send off to our Supabase. So here again, we upsert. So it's a mix of update and insert. So if the subscription doesn't exist yet, it inserts it. If it already exists, it then updates the existing record, which is exactly what we want. Great. And then the last one is once we're signed up for a subscription. So I now have the $120 per year. Maybe I want to upgrade and change. And then we can use the Stripe customer portal. Now we do need to configure that in the settings. So the customer portal settings here, we can say what we want to allow them to update. We can allow them to update their payment methods. You know, if we want to apply promotion codes when they upgrade, we can allow them to cancel the subscription. Let's say cancel immediately here. We want to show that. We want to allow them to switch to different pricing plans. Yeah, maybe subscription quantities as well. And then now here we need to select our pricing plans. Let's just select all of them. And then our users can switch between all of that. And we do need to set terms of service and privacy policy. So we got our terms of use here. Well, we actually don't. You would have to insert those, but let's just put that in here. Give that a save. And now we have the customer portal set up. So now our users on their account page, they can say, okay, open customer portal to manage my subscription on Stripe. And here we are in the customer portal, we can now say, okay, update plan. So yeah, actually, let me downgrade to the hobby plan. Maybe let's go monthly. And then I can confirm. I can see that it's now prorated in December. Okay, and so now I'm on the hobby plan. And so again, in the background, the webhooks have fired. And so now we have the updated information in our database. So the subscription has been updated to the $5 per month plan. And now also, if we go to the pricing page, we can see now highlighted is the hobby plan, which is our current plan, and it says manage, which we're using here the context to share that data between all our pages. Great. So maybe let's have a quick last look at the create portal link. Very similar here as well. We use the token from the client side to then get our user, our logged in user. Again, we create or retrieve customer. In this case, we'll already have the customer. And then we just create a billing portal session for this logged in customer. And then just return the URL for that redirect. Great. So I think that is pretty much what I wanted to cover with you today. One thing, yeah, you could make some changes if you know, the way, just want to show you kind of the automatic deployment with Vercel. So maybe let's say monthly and yearly instead of billing. So we can save that. Yeah, I didn't install Prettier, so I should run yarn after I pull all of this down. And here are changes, just the monthly billing. So I probably should type it out. I have too many shortcuts set up. Change billing name, and then just push up the main branch. There we are. And so now Vercel, where have we see change billing name. So Vercel is now rebuilding, and so we'll see in a little while the monthly and yearly billing. Again, we have our static regeneration. It's still building. Let's have a look. Loading build outputs, build complete. Great, so that is complete. And so now if we reload that, we now see our changes reflected here. Great. So yes, hopefully that will allow you to get started, build your own software as a service applications. Thanks so much for joining, and enjoy your coding. Happy coding. See you next time. Bye-bye.